Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 165, Opponents Turning Allies. Aaron briefed Renita about the arrangement he had made for her with Ace Almera. The girl was very impressed with him as a result, thinking to herself that the guy cared for her in his own way even when he acted recluse. Renita agreed to Aaron's arrangement without a second's thought. She had meant it when she said she'd follow his advice to AT. Aaron also breathed a sigh of relief knowing that most of the girl's free time would now be spent on her class-specific training instead of following him that borderline on stalking. Aaron wished to do the same with all the other members of his team. Jake needed a tank to show him that sometimes having one versatile spell in one's arsenal wasn't enough. Steve needed a capable berserker to tell him doubting his strength was the worst thing a ranker like him could do. And Becky needed a fine-tuning in controlling her mana consumption. Anna and Belle had officially started their ranking journey, thanks to Aaron's aid. The Butcher had provided them with the tried and tested potions to help them break through into F rank safely after he returned from his mission. Things were sorted with Anna. She was already working as an apprentice under a D rank healer in one of the Academy's infirmaries. Aaron didn't need to worry about her. Belle was also self-sufficient in his class-specific skills. But the guy needed combat training. He was completely opposite to Renita in this regard. Aaron was guiding his team members as he always did at their usual place when he heard a voice from behind him. Yo. Steve and the cunning asshole Aaron. What's up? Aaron furrowed his brow when he heard that. He was cunning, he knew that. But he hadn't shown his assholiest to anybody yet. And he certainly didn't permit anyone to spit facts about him. So he looked behind him. And saw Ron's raiders coming towards his team. The other members White Raven were sent on the edge after it saw the opponent's team led by its dual berserkers Ron and Dino. You bastard, Dino. What do you mean by cunning? Steve, calm down. I'm sure our friends didn't mean it in that way. Let's talk with them. The rest of you guys, stay here. Aaron calmed Steve down before things went out of control. The skirmishes needed to happen inside the battlegrounds. The ones that happened outside the battlegrounds would be heavily penalized by the Academy. The Scrooge in Aaron always thought about his merps before he let his other emotions take over. A calm-looking Aaron and a pissed-off-looking Steve headed to their ex-opponents. The former had told his team to stay behind and they had obliged. Ron also ordered his team to halt at a distance before marching forward with Dino in tow. The two pairs met in the middle. And had a brief staring content. It was Ron who broke the silence first. Aaron Idril, how are you? Don't pay attention to this loudmouth. He is still salty about his loss at your hands. Oh, I'm fine, Ron. Thanks for asking. And I certainly don't mind a dog that barks. You know what they say about barking dogs, right? Aaron smirked at Ron without paying any heed to Dino who was looking at him menacingly. The Butcher would normally ignore the jeers thrown his way. But something told him the opposite team had come here to negotiate. The first rule of negotiation was never to appear as the weaker side. You damn rat. You had gotten lucky that day. And our teammates were she. Dino, shut the fuck up before I lose my cool here. We are here to talk business. Not settle the old scores. Now's not the time. Aaron had a chuckle after he heard Ron's statement. It looked like he was confronting Dino and criticizing him for his impolite actions. But Aaron could see that Ron was just as pissed about his loss as Dino, if not more. He just didn't let it cloud his judgment. Aaron, we've come here on an important business. Let's keep any differences we have on the sidelines. And make a truce. You know why we are suggesting this, right? The inter-year ranking wars. Aaron didn't waste time dragging the conversation. He had already figured out why these dual berserkers had come to him. Ron nodded his head before continuing. That's right. The inter-year ranking wars are always a lose-lose situation for first-year students. And almost nobody can get away from it, no matter how strong their background or battle prowess was. But what if we join hands together to go through the situation? Ron tucked his hands inside his trousers pockets and waited for Aaron's reply. Something told him the guy who had beat him fair and square knew what he was talking about. You mean forming two teams out of the Team White Raven crew and Ron's raiders? One team would be geared towards absolute loss, while the other would have a fighting chance to win their ranking war. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course, said Aaron and looked at the remaining members of Ron's raiders standing behind Ron's back. The odds still didn't look promising to him even if they were to apply this tried and tested method of first years. Sigh. Dino was not wrong about the cunning part he said about you. That's right. Let's break our teams temporarily for this inter-year ranking war and minimize our losses. What do you say? Ron sent the ball in Aaron's court after that. By now he had realized that Aaron held a very important position in the White Raven crew. He wasn't sure about Steve's standing, so he preferred talking to the close combat expert for now. Well, the idea is not bad. It's tempting even. But we'll only agree to cooperate with you under one condition. Aaron said and looked at Steve. But now the berserker had gotten used to acting like a silent leader. So he folded his hands and waited for the real leader of the team to make a deal with the potential allies. All he had to do now was look stoic and act like he knew what Aaron was talking about. And what is this condition you speak of? Ron raised his brows and asked that. He had an inkling that Aaron's condition wasn't going to be in his team's interest. Chapter 166, Unfair Split. Ron raised his brows and asked that. He had an inkling that Aaron's condition wasn't going to be in his team's best interest. We want a 70:30 split in our favor, said Aaron with a straight face. Dino opened his eyes wide in surprise while Ron looked like he was shocked to silence. I told you, Ron, this guy's nuts. We don't need him for anything. I say we. What did I tell you? But. Al, all right. I'll just zip it. Ron finally silenced loudmouth Dino with his blank face and sharp gaze. Then he looked at Aaron with the same intensity before replying. Aaron, we want to be in alliance with you. Not turn into your slaves, you know. Surely, we can come to a mutual understanding. But there's nothing mutual about that split. Aaron didn't budge an inch and pressed on. It can be mutual if we consider who brings the most benefit to the alliance. Aaron, I agree that your battle prowess is exceptional. But it's still not much against the second-year students to completely dominate them. Even we. Ron wanted to talk some more but was interrupted by Aaron with his next statement. I'm not talking about my battle powers. And I know that you know what I'm talking about as well. Aaron looked straight into Ron's eyes after he said that. The latter understood what he was talking about and sighed. Only Steve was confused about what Aaron was implying. He asked Aaron by opening a private audio channel with him. Aaron, what are you guys talking about? Battle passes, Steve. They want me to use my battle passes in the inter-year war and benefit from them. The ones that I haven't disclosed till now. Only then did the realization dawn on Steve. The battle passes. The perks and advantages the first-year students would receive by winning the intra-class and inter-class battles with exceptional performances. The top-tier first-year students who had won the battle passes would only use them in the inter-year ranking wars to tilt the match in their favor. This was how the first-year students had been given a fighting chance to score a win against second-year students. If they could pull this off, of course. Ron knew that Aaron must have won a good battle pass because of the performance he displayed against them. The cunning berserker thought that he should gain some advantage out of his loss. 60:40 in your favor. That's my bottom line. Ron said and clenched his fist. He wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the battle pass. He knew that some exceptional battle passes gave the first-year students the advantage they needed to bulldoze over the second-year students. The price for winning against the second-year squad was extremely tempting. The sheer amount of merps the second year had to pay was one thing. That's because the second-year students would have to pay at least 10 times the betting amount if they lost against first years. And that multiplier would go higher if it was pre-planned before the starting of the match. But the merps payload was not the only thing. LA also offered attractive rewards that could only be gained by winning these matches. There's no such thing as a bottom line, Ron, it's just in your head. You'll come to realize this if you live long enough. Anyway, a 65-35 in our favor. And let me tell you one thing before you decide to refuse this offer. It certainly ain't our bottom line, if you know what I mean. Said Aaron seriously and folded his hands. Steve also subconsciously decided to follow the butcher's lead and folded his hands as well. Then he resumed his previous position, thinking that he would look like a copycat if he were to follow everything Aaron does. Ron understood what Aaron meant when he said this wasn't his bottom line. Aaron was going to say something deal-breaking if he didn't take his offer now. Ron realized that they were the weaker side in the negotiation. Aaron had at least 2 battle passes that he knew of while they had only one. Technically, Aaron's team had more leverage to ally with any other team, which might gladly accept his absurd split after thinking about the potential reward. Ron clenched his lips under his teeth before finally nodding. Dino wanted to say something at that point but Ron kept his index finger over his lips, shushing the loud mouth. Then he looked at Aaron again and said, "Now that you have your way, can we finally get back to the alliance formation? I suggest our team A should be. There seems to be some misunderstanding, Ron. I'll tell you how we are going to split our teams. And you'll have to follow my suggestions to AT. And why would I do that?" Ron asked with suppressed anger. He was going to lose it talking to this cunning asshole. "Because I know my passes. Let's just say one of them would only be effective when it is used with the split I'll be suggesting. Then tell me about your battle pass first." "Ha ha ha. You are funny, Ron. I'll give you that. That was a good one. Why don't you tell me which battle pass you've received first?" Ron sighed before shaking his head. He was just trying his luck here. He knew the first-year students would never declare which battle passes they received until the moment they used it. This was done to prevent any leak from taking place and opponents taking countermeasures against those passes. Aaron was confident Ron would budge from his position. That was because he had more battle passes than them. The edge he would bring to the alliance could not be scoffed at. And his predictions were on point. All right. The split will take place as per your suggestions as well. Now tell us your strategy, said Ron after dropping his shoulders. Then he called his teammates over. Aaron and Steve also did the same. It was time the alliance decided how it was going to score big in the upcoming inter-year ranking war. Chapter 167, Inter-Year Ranking War. Next match in the inter-year ranking war. The Ravens of first-year students vs the Rudy's Wreckers. The match will start in 5 minutes. The referee announced while standing in the middle of the battle ring and then retreated to his original position. Today was the second day of the inter-year ranking war. The compulsory matches were going to get held for a few more days. And this match was one of them. The Ravens was the name of the party that had first-year students. Aaron was one of them and Renita was the other. The rest of the teammates were taken from Ron's Raiders. They were Ron, Dino, and the Earth Element tank that Aaron had trashed in the previous match. Aaron's team only had one line of defense. The tank. Something to fall back on in case they need a breather. The rest of the team members were all fighters. The team was akin to a giant ball of kamikaze attack. Rudy Orton's team also contained 5 members including him. But his team looked more balanced than what the first-year students had come up with. All his members also looked more intimidating than the first-year newbies because of the subtle mana signatures they released out in the open. All of the members of Rudy's team were in the liquid stage of the F rank. And all of their BTP values had crossed the mark of 20. That meant individually, the second years were superior to the first-year students. That meant, Aaron's team could only depend on the team play. They couldn't carry out individual raids. The Butcher didn't like that but he had already committed. And he was enough to play by the books when it suited him. The 5 minutes were up quickly. And the teams were called into the battle ring they were assigned to. Do you have anything to declare? The referee asked formally both the team leaders. Aaron was assigned as the leader of his team. He came forward before stating out loud to the referee and his opponent team. Rudy Orton, a word. Rudy came forward uncaringly. He was intending to talk with the first years anyway. He verbally shot forth as soon as Aaron stood right in front of him. Aaron, is it? I've heard from you. Lightning Element close combat expert. Weren't those 3 your opponents in the interclass war? Yep. What about it? Hee. Nothing. It just means you guys understand your situation better. So, what were you going to talk about? I have a few things of my own to add as well. Let's just get this over with. Rudy said after he looked at the referee. The match was a foregone conclusion according to him. So he didn't want to waste much time on it. I'd like to discuss the betting amount. Rudy acted like he expected this from Aaron. He smiled before saying. Aaron, you already know what the standard rate is these days. The second-year students don't go below 15,000 merps as their betting amount. The most I can do is make it 12k. Well, I don't care about the so-called standard rate. I wish to change the betting amount, said Aaron with a stoic expression. Ron had creases on his forehead after he heard that. These first-year students won't learn the situation they are in, thought Rudy before replying with equally stoic countenance. Listen here, brat. I've tried to be nice. You can't go below 12k and that is something you can't negotiate on. Otherwise, you know the consequences. Oh. It seems there's a bit of misunderstanding. Who said anything about lowering the prices? Said Aaron with puzzled expressions. Rudy thought for a while before replying. You wish to accept the standard rate? No, I want to go beyond that 30,000 merps. Rudy had blank expressions on his face. Ron and Dino's expressions weren't too different either. It took a while for Orton Jr. to confirm what he just heard. You mean, you wish to bet 30k merps on a single match? How loaded are you and why do you wish to lose all that wealth in one go? Second-year students can go hard on you guys. But that's just how the academy works. You don't have to bend it backwards for us, you know. Rudy thought that the guy was just scared of the second-year students bullying. So he tried to console him. But Aaron didn't give him much time. Oh, we are not planning to lose here. Are you on board with the betting amount or not? Aaron said and smiled at Rudy. The latter smiled mirthlessly after hearing his young opponent's plans. I might have underestimated the delusion that comes from winning a few matches in the first year against other first years. Who am I kidding? I was like this guy as well when I was in the first year. I'll just make him realize the difference in our strength even when the average difference in our BTP values is no more than 3 digits. thought Rudy to himself before agreeing to Aaron's offer. There was no point in talking with the first-year delusional lunatic anymore. Aaron smiled wholeheartedly after getting Rudy on board. He called forth the referee and updated him about the new betting amount. The referee thought that it was the second-year student who was bullying the first-year students into submissions. He tried to talk Aaron out of this deal, but the latter assured him that the proposed betting amount was something he had asked from Rudy, not the other way around. The referee of course didn't believe him, but this time he didn't argue and just approved the updated amount. But this was not all Aaron had to say. "We wish to use a battle pass on Rudy's wreckers." Rudy raised his eyebrows after hearing that. He was expecting this to happen. Since the guy was so confident about the sky-high betting amount, Rudy thought that Aaron must have had a good trick up his sleeve for him to act this way. Chapter 168, Bonus Chapter Keep One Out. Rudy was curious about the battle pass Aaron was going to use on them. He was hoping it wouldn't be too detrimental to his team, making him score a Pyrrhic victory. But he never once thought that a single battle pass would be enough to bridge the gap between the battle potentials of first and second-year students. Alas, Rudy was in for a rude awakening. Because he could only maintain his thoughts of dominating first years until he got to know Aaron's battle pass. Aaron Idril is using his self-earned battle pass Keep One Out. He can make any one team member of his opponent team leave the match. The Ron's Wreckers will have to fight with only 4 members in this match. Aaron Idril, choose the student you wish from the opponent team to get dropped out of the match. Aaron smiled devilishly at Rudy after he heard the referee's confirmation. Fuck. Aaron, listen here. I wish Rudy Orton to sit this match out. Aaron didn't let Rudy continue his statement and declared his wish to make the enemy captain abandon his team. He already knew that Rudy was the most capable ranker in his team. Plus, the lack of leadership would send his team into disarray. Rudy looked hatefully at Aaron, but the latter didn't take back his decision. He had no choice but to leave the battle area. But not before telling his team members a few strategies he came up with within that short amount of time. Aaron and Renita had practiced a little with the dual berserkers and their tank Charmin for a few days before the start of the inter-year ranking war. They had come up with some simple tactics that they could use to make maximum use of their DPS-centric team formation. Rudy's Wreckers was wrecked from the get-go because of the absence of their leader. But it wasn't like the team members had become completely useless. They still had higher BTP values backing each of them up. And their experiences in LA had also trained them for various scenarios in ranking wars. Rudy's Wreckers had a rogue, a mage, a healer, and a tank in their team. Rudy was their berserker, someone who took care of their mid-range attacks. Something they were missing because of him dropping out. A rogue was akin to a close combat expert. But they'd use crafty tricks in their attacks to sneak behind their enemies. Unlike the close combat experts, they won't engage with their opponent in a frontal assault. The rogue in the Rudy's Wreckers had an affinity with the derived element of fog. That alone with his element-specific spells allowed the guy to generate and control a dense amount of fog in his surroundings. The referee started the countdown. And soon a bell rang in the surrounding area, indicating the start of the match. Aaron knew the battle was not going to be won over easily just because he had used the battle pass. He never underestimated his opponents. But his OCD-ish behavior kicked in for real when he knew the opponent this time was superior to him in BTP value. As soon as the ring was heard, Aaron launched him towards the rogue. The latter also had the same idea, it seemed. Because his spells and fighting style made it difficult for his team members to help him. Aaron was not alone. He was accompanied by Renita. He had told the dual berserkers and their tank to hold the fort while he took care of the rogue. If left unchecked, the rogue had the potential to tilt the scales in the enemy's favor with his sneak attacks at crucial times. Aaron's team needed to take care of him first. Boy, you seem pretty confident in fighting it out with the second year. You at least have guts. But sometimes they are not everything, you know. Ha ha ha. Aaron kept quiet at the opponent's remark as they were about to clash. He didn't like to use talk-talk techniques to engage with his opponents. That was reserved for either before the battle to incite them, or after it when he won over them to rub salt over their wounds. Sedated perception was activated by Aaron as soon as the fog started building up in the surroundings, with the rogue being at its epic entree. He wasn't taking any chances to watch how the enemy reacted. The preemptive strike was his favorite move anyway. The rogue could only see Aaron disappearing in the white fog he had created with his spell. But he only smiled devilishly after he saw that move. In the domain of fog, only his opponents could go blind. Not him. That's because the rogue's spell also acted as an extra sense for him to know the precise location of his opponent within the domain of fog. It would also interfere with the opponent's mana sense and make it almost impossible for them to know his location. In a way, the rogue's spell and his element was a perfect counter to Aaron's sedated perception. The butcher still had exceptional speed and reflexes due to his spell and class. But he couldn't make the best use of them in the domain of fog. Aaron vanished from the rogue's sight but found himself getting surrounded by his opponent's fog. His mana sense was also sending him mixed signals, so he retracted it to avoid confusion. Damn it! How do I search the fucker in this blinding fog? Aaron took his 2 guitars out and ran blitz bolt through them. He was ready for the opponent's strike. He thought that maybe he had used sedated perception hastily without understanding the enemy's battle strategy. What if he decides to draw out the match? Or if he leaves the domain of fog while Aaron is inside waiting on him to attack? Aaron started doubting his moves when he heard a familiar yet not so familiar voice in his head. Enemy incoming 4 o'clock. The gem has talked again. Chapter 169, Nasal Mutilation. The gem has talked again. This time to warn him of incoming danger heading his way. Thanks. Aaron could only come up with a simple reply because he had a rogue on his tail now. The sedated perception was still active. Yet the fog release was unnaturally fast. Aaron's time element spell barely gave him the advantage to prepare for the counterattack. But the gem's intervention was timely. It allowed Aaron to narrow down his area to focus on and make full use of his time element spell. Aaron informed Renita that came with him to stay at a certain point within the domain of fog and wait for him there. The ranger wanted to ask him how they were going to locate each other in this situation after they separated, but Aaron's look told her that his orders weren't disputable. She sighed and followed Aaron's directions and disappeared in the fog. The rogue seemingly appeared out of nowhere as soon as Renita was gone. He thought that he had caught Aaron off guard with his spell. But he was shocked to see that Aaron was staring right at him when he showed himself. The rogue still had his share of battle experiences and his higher BTP value. Plus, he was akin to a ruler in his domain of fog. So he tried to find a chink in Aaron's defense by heading straight at him. Aaron was already prepared. His sense of time was different from that of his opponent. So he was paying close attention to the enemy's moves? A rogue coming straight at him only meant one thing. He had another insidious trick he could use on him. Aaron was right. The rogue had drawn out a whip artifact from his storage. But instead of the attached rope, it was now generating strings of fog that almost looked tangible. Aaron didn't want the rogue to use that artifact on him. He had already started his attack with the combo of Blitz Bolt and Blitz Steps with sedated perception in the backdrop. All the enemy could see was a few tongues of lightning making their presence known every once in a while when Aaron attacked him. But thanks to the fog's skewed perception, the rogue was barely able to defend himself from Aaron's attack. Aaron knew time was of the essence. If he kept on fighting with this for longer than necessary, his team was going to lose. That's why he thought of using an AoE right after he finished executing the Blitz Bolt through his guitars. But his opponent was too smart to stay at the same place in his domain of fog. He retreated into an unknown direction. And his retreat was covered by an even dense release of fog that interfered with Aaron's senses. The rogue had beads of sweat on his head after he saw the ferocity with which Aaron fought. That too when he had odds set against him. The rogue was sure things would have become more difficult if he hadn't won the spell in the auction event and used it here against the butcher. The rogue was trying to come up with new strategies while he took a breather, thinking Aaron would be busy finding him and assuming a defensive stance. Unfortunately, his opponent didn't wait for him to finish his preparations. Aaron wouldn't have found out his opponent's location if it wasn't for the gem. It told him exactly where the rogue was busy plotting things, hiding behind a smoke screen. The butcher didn't waste time. He executed Blitzstorm as soon as the opponent was within the AoE spell's range. Executing an AoE on a single opponent was usually considered wasteful. But for this situation, Aaron thought otherwise. The Blitzstorm lit up the fog and it gave off the impression that the raging rainy clouds had descended on the ground. But Aaron wasn't admiring the little wonder he created with his spell. He was focused on his next move. The Blitzstorm finally caught the rogue off guard. The tongues of lightning descended on him. He was just a few moments away from coating himself with a dense layer of fog that would have lightened the attack's effect. But unlike him, Aaron was more decisive with his attacks. He took advantage of the fact that the rogue was stunned because of being hit by the Blitzstorm and executed Blitz Steps. Aaron got close to the rogue, ran Blitz Bolt at full power through his guitars and swung one of them in front of the opponent's face while he defended the whip attack with the other. Aaron knew the whip swing was weak and only done to scare him. Yet he still defended himself from that attack. Because he knew the element of fog was special. It held the power to interfere with his senses. He didn't want to get stunned as well while he was in the process of attacking the rogue. The guitar swing was lethal. It chopped off the tip of the rogue's nose. Aaron disabled the sedated perception after that. His job was almost done. Haha. I cut off your ego along with your nose. How does it feel, Mr. Rogue? The rogue looked hatefully at Aaron as held his nose. He was pissed by the guy's savage way of attack and retreat. He immediately launched himself towards Aaron, a dense cloud of fog surging behind him that attested to the anger he felt. Aaron turned back and bolted. He was now chased by the rogue within the domain of the fog. He didn't forget to taunt him some more while he did that. Why aren't you speaking now, Mr. Rogue? You were so chatty Cathy before. Cat got your tongue? Or perhaps your nose? Haha. Aaron jeered him some more as he ran off in a certain direction. Where is she? Aaron asked the gem. He was counting on the gem's help to pull this move. Thankfully, the gem didn't disappoint and told him what he wanted to hear. She's 10 o'clock from your position. Contact in next 10 seconds. Chapter 170, Aaron and Renita's team play. Chapter 170, Aaron and Renita's team play. Aaron smiled after he heard that. Why do you always talk to me when I'm in the midst of a battle? Not that I'm complaining. Anyway, thanks again. Said Aaron and bolted to the direction the gem pointed him. With the rogue chasing right behind him. He was mostly uninjured except for his nose. And he was pissed on Aaron for cutting his nose. It was a humiliating act no ranker would perform on the other. In his rage, the rogue had forgotten that Aaron was not the only one that had entered his domain of fog. Aaron purposefully fell behind to let the rogue catch up to him. Once he was within his range, the butcher executed Blitzstorm once again. This time the rogue was ready. He coated his body in a dense layer of tangible fog just before the wild streams of lightning hit him. It didn't do much damage to him like the last time. It only hindered his march and froze him in his tracks. But that was what Aaron was aiming for anyway. He bolted in a different direction while shouting at seemingly nobody. Renita, now. Renita came out of the fog with both her guns pointed straight at the rogue. She fired at him without wasting a moment as soon as she turned visible. Ah, fuck. This bitch was hiding here. The rogue could only have the spare time to think about this thought before his torso was riddled with mana bullets. The mana bullets whizzed through the air and landed right on the stunned rogue's chest and stomach. Renita had purposefully missed the vital spots. Renita's bullets were meant for long-range attacks. So when she fired from mid-range that borderline on being close range, the impact each of the rightly landed bullets generated was not something to be taken lightly of. The rogue's body was shaken and pushed back with each bullet hitting him. But that was not all. Aaron followed that attack with his Blitzstorm once again. The butcher thought that he was lacking in mid-range spells that targeted an individual at that time. Aaron had used the spell to keep a safe distance from the guy. He knew his attacks won't be as effective as he wanted them to be. And dragging the match by engaging with the guy was going to be detrimental to him even if he came out on top in the duel. The Blitzstorm was executed for its stun effect. Not for Aaron to get close to the guy. But for Renita. The ranger made her mana guns disappear into thin air. She too had an AoE spell of her own. One that made Aaron almost lose his first match with her. But Renita needed time to execute that spell. And that time was provided by Aaron's spell execution. Renita manifested loads of wind shurikens around her with her wind element spell. She willed the wind shurikens to target the rogue while guiding them with her mana sense. The sheer number of wind shurikens made it difficult for the rogue to guard himself against even with his dense layer of tangible fog that kept on getting dissolved and rematerialized. The barrage of wind shurikens soon surpassed the rate at which the fog was getting rematerialized. The wind shuriken soon made contact with the rogue and his skin was finally pierced due to the lack of mana layer protecting him. The rogue was heavily injured. Renita tried her best not to make any fatal injuries. But the AoE attack was still potent enough to make the guy go on his knees. Aaron didn't show any mercy. He approached the fallen guy quickly, grabbed his head, and executed Blitzbolt. The fog tried to create a weak defense against his contact. And it tried to climb Aaron's hand. But it soon stopped descending on Aaron's arm before getting dispersed into the surroundings. That was because Aaron's Blitzbolt had landed on its intended target. The rogue was finally zapped out of his consciousness as his body lost the strength to stay on the knees. The unconscious rogue was still supported by Aaron's hand as he still held his head in his vice-like grip. The rogue landed flat on his face soon after Aaron released his grip. His cut nose started bleeding again, making the battleground have a taste of his blood. The rogue had circulated his mana and made it saturate on his wound to stop the bleeding temporarily during the battle. But that mana control was lost when the guy lost consciousness. And his cut started acting normally again. But the mutilator who had cut the rogue didn't care about his opponent's well-being. That would be the job of the academy. He quickly signaled Renita to follow him. And headed outside the waning domain of fog with his ranger on the toe. When the duo came out, it witnessed a discouraging sight. Charmin, the team's only tank, was on his knees. His earth shield was getting crumpled by the barrage of fireballs executed by the opponent team's mage. The opponent's mage didn't have to take any risks. She was protected by her team's tank. And was supported by her healer teammate. Ron and Dino tried alternatively to attack the opponent's tank. But the mage's spells were flexible. Sometimes simple was the best. It held especially true for classes like mages who depended heavily on their spell's execution time. The fire element made it difficult for the dual berserkers to approach the trio who stuck together. Their metal skin spells would send the berserker senses on overdrive. They would feel that the temperature of their skin would rise sharply every time the fireball spells hit them. So they stopped their attacks and went on defense. They supported their tank while making use of his earth shield to keep safe from the mage's fireball. But the tank could only handle so many insistent attacks. He soon ran out of mana and his shield crumpled. The enemy's mage had beads of sweat on her head. But she wasn't as tired. Nor was she out of mana. That's because her healer teammate supported her mana consumption with supporting spells of her own. Ron and Dino made the same conclusion after looking at the situation they had found themselves in. They needed that wretched close combat expert's help. Chapter 171, Quake Element Tank. The trio of mage, healer, and tank saw Aaron and Renita coming out of the waning domain of fog. They had grim expressions on their faces when that happened. They had understood that it could only mean one thing. Their rogue had lost the fight. The emotions were opposite for Ron's team. It found newfound hope in Aaron and Renita. The dual berserkers and Charmin watched with metaphorical starry eyes as their close combat expert and ranger joined them. A sort of ceasefire was created after Aaron's entry. Both teams went on guard against each other while observing the opponent's movements. Aaron used that opportunity to have a word with Ron. How are we doing so far? Bad. These three are staying close to each other. We need to separate them and take care of them individually. I can gauge that on my own, Ron. What I am asking is whether you've used your berserking potions or not. Ron made a weird face after hearing Aaron's reply. But he controlled his irritation and continued. We have used one potion each. And can take one more. What's your plan? Aaron looked at Ron and Dino meaningfully after he heard that. He hesitated a bit before stating what he was thinking of. How confident are you in taking care of the mage? Ron replied immediately as if he was expecting this from Aaron. Well, mage herself isn't the problem. I can sustain her spells while Dino goes close to her using Renita's cover fire from a distance. The problem is the healer who keeps on replenishing the mage's mana supply. And that mage can use spell combos. And her spell combos can include triple spell castings. Plus, she can stack her fireball spells. And let's not forget their tank. He had made it impossible for us to zero in on any one of them without facing the consequences. Aaron assumed a wise man's pose after he heard that. He stroked his chin with his hands before concluding something about the enemy mage. In short, the mage girl is hot. The healer is doing his job right. And the tank is tanky. Ron had creases on his forehead after he heard Aaron's remark. He didn't know why Aaron was so chilled out when the favors were stacked against them. Especially when the guy had raised the stakes of the battle on his own, without consulting them. Just tell us the plan. And we'll figure something out. Ron said frustratingly. He had understood that Aaron must have a good plan for him to act carefree like that. All right. Here's the plan. Renita and I will approach the tank and draw him away from the mage and the healer. Then all you need to do is keep on applying pressure on them. Meanwhile, we'll be taking care of the tank. We'll be almost out of mana by then. But we'll join your battle to create faux pressure. How's that? Ron could have come up with this idea on his own. But had he said that, Aaron would have had to take more responsibility at his behest. Knowing the guy, he would have demanded more share from their split for his extra work. But since this plan came from Aaron himself, they had nothing to complain about. Ron, even though Aaron was a good guy trying to win this battle at any cost. What about Charmin? Will he also have to join either of us guys? Or do we use him to create a foothold in the battlefield? Ron asked while looking at the enemy. They also seemed to be discussing something among themselves. I could use him, but he is not fast enough to retreat and advance skillfully. And creating a foothold on the battlefield is a good idea when you have people who can take your position and relieve you. This is not one of those times. So you take Charmin with you. And remember, don't slack off. There's a chance me and Renita would be unable to join your battle after our showdown with the tank. So try to pressure the mage from the get-go with your sidekick on the toe. Said Aaron while looking at Dino. The latter was about to pop a vein on his forehead after he heard being called a mere sidekick. Ron stated condition before Dino had the chance to vent his anger. Sure. But we'll retreat if and when you come to join us. Our spells don't work together. All right. Said Aaron before talking something privately with Renita. She had a weird look after she heard what Aaron said through the private audio channel. But she nodded her head to show her acceptance. Great. Let's commence our plans then, shall we? Said Aaron and bolted in the direction of the tank. The trio was ready. The tank was a quake element user. He was able to produce quakes in the surroundings. He was able to send those quakes through the ground, objects, and even though the air via direct contact or removing those limitations through the usage of quake element spells. The quake element tank saw that Aaron was heading and had a huge grin on his face. It was about time he let the new guy taste the power of his spells. The quake element tank stretched his palm open and clapped them against each other in Aaron's way. Surprisingly, that clap didn't produce any audible sound. But one could see the nearby air getting distorted as a result of that action. Aaron was already briefed about the tank's ability. He immediately activated sedated perception when he saw that guy performing that particular action in his direction. Aaron was barely grazed by the quake waves as he almost dodged it with his time element spell. And that slight graze of that invisible spell was enough for the mutilator to understand why the dual berserkers were hesitating to get near that guy. The quakes couldn't be stopped by any medium or item. They could only be dodged by getting out of the path of their travel. Plus, the quakes would travel through one's body and injure the internal organs. They also held the power to affect weak rankers' blood circulation in their body. In short, staying in the range of those quakes was bad news. And since they were as fast as sound, the rankers didn't have much leeway to dodge them. What should I do? The guy is a tough nut to crack even with Renita's help, thought Aaron as he got away from the range of the next wave of quakes heading his way. Chapter 172, Stack Sedated Perception v2.0. Thought Aaron as he got away from the range of the next wave of quakes heading his way. Renita was providing him cover fire so the guy couldn't completely focus on the close combat expert trying to target him. You want to use Stack Sedated Perception? Aaron heard a voice in his head. It was from the gem. The butcher's eyes lit up when he understood how using the stack time element spell can become a key to making the tank leave the trio's formation. But then he immediately thought of the spell's side effect and his mood was sour. The gem understood what the guy was thinking and replied. I can ease the side effects. But I can help you cast only about 2 stack sedated perception combos before I go into slumber. And easing your side effects will remove the possibility of enabling you to cast it for the second time. The ball was in Aaron's court now. Should he face the repercussions and save another combo usage for himself? Or should he only use the combo once and face reduced side effects of the spell? Aaron then remembered the combo spell's side effects again and chose to go with the first option. Reduce the side effects of the combo. He let his decision be known to the gem. And it obliged. Stack sedated perception made its comeback at that time. Aaron was barely able to manage the quakes from before. But he could now see the almost invisible quakes traveling through the air with ease. He now had the time to dodge them and approach the tank. Aaron smiled after experiencing the effects of the spell. He could feel that he was more in control in the almost frozen world than before. His senses were also keeping up with slowed down time around him. Aaron had figured out by now that the gem had an agenda to help him. There was no free meal in the world. The gem was probably helping him to get something from him when it asks for it. But Aaron didn't worry too much about that for now. Right now winning this match was more important than anything for him. Especially, when he had placed a bet on so many merps in this match. The tank saw that the enemy close combat expert who was till now dancing on the tunes of his quake spells disappeared in front of him. His quake wave seemed to have pierced the guy, but the instances indicated that all those were Aaron's after images. Then the tank felt a sharp pain in his guts. He was already lifted in the air before he saw who had hit him there. His body was flown about 30 meters away from his previous position. And his fall on the ground couldn't completely eradicate the momentum. The tank was dragged on the ground by that momentum and was thrown a few meters away from his landing spot. Aaron was still in his stack sedated perception. He had kicked the guy earlier in his stomach using the blitz steps on hyperdrive and running blitz bolt through his legs. But he didn't stop there. He followed the tank as he flew in the air. And waited for his momentum to get killed. He performed the same action again as soon as the guy stopped moving. Aaron had created a sufficient distance for the dual berserkers to attack the mage and healer without worrying about the tank. Those two were most wary of the tank because of the effect quakes had on their metal skin spell after all. Renita wasn't even given a chance to follow Aaron. She was left behind even without her knowing she was left behind. She puffed up her cheeks after seeing Aaron going full throttle on the tank. She thought she was special when Aaron had used the same speed against her. But this tank had made her realize her assumption was wrong. And she was not happy because of it. Renita soon followed Aaron's direction. Her speed wasn't as great as the current Aaron, but her wind element movement spell had allowed her to be plenty light on her feet. The tank felt like throwing up after he received the second kick at the same spot the first kick had landed. He was kind of scared after realizing the terror of Aaron's breakneck speed. But the tank's high BTP value and his strengthened body because of it allowed him to keep his cool amid the pain. He had realized that the lightning element freak was soon going to attack him. The guy immediately clapped his hands all around him to prevent Aaron from fearlessly approaching him. The quakes were sent in almost all directions and that created a dead zone with the tank standing in the middle of it. But Aaron was nowhere to be found. The tank carefully looked around but only saw Renita who was approaching him from a distance. She had pointed her monogun at him. Her fingers were just about to press the triggers. But Renita wasn't looking at him while she pointed the gun. She was looking over the tank's head. The guy thought of a sudden possibility and his expressions darkened as a result. Aaron was descending on the tank right below him at a rapid pace. The latter had underestimated his current speed and his heightened perception. The tank thought his all-around Quake execution was a preemptive strike. And for the most part, it was. But Aaron was still able to see there was no way to get near his target without facing the repercussions of his internal organs facing the brunt of it. So Aaron used the blitz steps to jump high in the air. He had already sent his mana circuits on hyperdrive. Hence, the output he had achieved was exceptional this time. The tank saw Aaron approaching him from above him. And he wanted to send another wave of quakes towards him. The guy was defenseless at this point even with his crazy speed due to him being unable to maneuver in the air. But alas, Aaron had Renita give him her much-needed support at this time. She had already fired her mana bullets which started making their presence known on the tank's arms and legs soon after. The tank's Quake execution failed because of the interruption from Renita's cover fire. And Aaron got within the striking distance from his opponent as a result. Chapter 173, Into the Storm. This is it for me for now. You'll have to manage things on your own, said the gem in Aaron's head and went silent. But the latter didn't have time to think much about it. Especially now since the stack spell had turned into a normal time element spell for him. Aaron cancelled his execution of sedated perception as well. He didn't need it anymore. Plus, this wasn't the last fight he was going to be a part of for today. He needed to be frugal about his mana consumption. As a result of dispelling both the time element spells, Aaron was now out of the diluted world. He landed right beside the tank the next moment. Aaron had a sudden urge to kill this tank with a special derived element. After all, just like the fog guy, he too had the perfect counter against a close combat expert like him. But with so many witnesses watching his every move, he settled for only beating the crap out of him. Aaron ran Blitz Bolt at its full potential through Dicerus right and performed a slash at the guy's torso almost vertically. The tank had worn an armor artifact so he wasn't worried about killing the opponent in the process. The slash was only meant to make the tank go on defense. Which he did by raising his arm's bracers against the slash. The slash was stopped by the bracer. But Aaron then drew out Dicerus left and pierced the guy's arm from below with it. Dicerus left was lodged right between ulna and radius bones of the tank's right forearm. The tip would have been out from the other end but the guy's bracer wares prevented that from happening. But this was enough for Aaron anyway. He didn't show any mercy and yanked the lodged guitar towards him before twisting it. It took a while for the tank to register the pain of Aaron's mutilating actions on his body. But when he did, all he could see was a white light in front of him accompanied by the deafening noise of a whole lot of nothing. The sheer pain had short-circuited his senses. Aaron's lightning element attack also had a hand to play in it. But then his brain adapted to the pain and finally decided to process it. And that led to the tank's downfall. The tank shouted from his very soul after he felt the pain in his forearm. He forgot about the fight and defending himself and just sat right then and there on his knees, holding his pierced forearm with his other hand. The tank tilted his head back as he let his vocal cords relieve some pressure for him. But as he looked up, he saw a palm reaching his face. His body didn't feel like it should defy the palm's precession for some unknown reason. Otherwise, the consequences would be even more severe. Aaron grabbed the tank's face with his palm. His fingers spread all over his face. The gap in fingers allowed the tank to look at Aaron for one last time for the day. "Night night, mate," said Aaron out loud and ran Blitz Bolt through his palm. With it, he made the tank experience his sought-after relief from pain. "Two down, two to go," said Aaron as he released the tank's face from his grip. He looked at Renita who was approaching him and commented, "Good support. But next time, eyes on the opponent. Not on me." Renita's cheeks turned red when she heard that. She tried to mask her blush with fake anger. It's all your fault. You should have told me about your move sooner. I was caught off guard and had to look for you." Aaron scratched his forehead with a mirthless smile on his face before replying. "I didn't know that I'd be able to stack my spell in that situation. That came out of the blue." Which spell did you stack? And what do you mean you didn't know? This speed isn't in your control." "Something like that. Anyway, my previous instructions about the Berserker boy still stand. Do you understand?" Aaron asked as the smile vanished from his face. Renita saw the butcher's mood suddenly changing and replied honestly, "I do. But Aaron, think about the repercussions." Aaron shook his head before replying stoically, "See. I'm not forcing you to go through this. Even without you, I'd be able to manage things on my own just fine. Decide." "We don't have much time," said Aaron while looking at the full-fledged battle unfolding in front of him at a distance. The mage was bombarding the dual berserkers from all sides. Ron had managed to injure the healer with one of his berserker charges before retreating to his initial position. That had affected the recovery speed of the mage, who had now started to struggle to keep the berserkers in check. Aaron started to walk in the direction of the ongoing fight, leaving Renita behind him to ponder over. One could see she wanted to prevent Aaron from doing what he was going to do. But she also knew that he wouldn't listen after looking into his cold eyes. Renita finally clenched her fists before following Aaron, who had by then started running with his movement speed towards the mage. The mage saw that Aaron was approaching her from a distance and she couldn't help opening her eyes in surprise. She had thought that it might take a while, but her Quake Element user teammate was more than enough to take care of the guy. She had already been proven wrong once when she had predicted the battle result between Aaron and her Fog Element user teammate. Aaron and Renita had beat him while staying in his domain. Now the same duo had pulled another stunt and beat their Quake Element teammate as well. Therefore, it'd be a cold day in hell before the mage made the same mistake and underestimated the simple-looking novice ranker coming towards her like an unstoppable force. Aaron saw a barrage of fireballs heading his way when he was within the mage's area of influence. This time, he didn't dodge. He didn't take any detours. Renita was right behind Aaron, following him in his path. And all she saw was her heartthrob getting bombarded by the fury of stacked fire element spells. Aaron. Her shrill cry echoed in the battle ring and outside it. Chapter 174, Backstab. Renita's shrill cry echoed in the battle ring and outside it. She thought the guy had gone mad. He wasn't exactly his 100% due to the 2 battles he was part of. And yet he had gone right ahead to duel with the mage, who was clearly in a better condition than him. That too in a front clash, when the mage held the advantage because of her AoE spells. Renita could only think of one thing when Aaron pulled that move. He wasn't counting on my support this time. Unbeknownst to her, Renita's eyes were moist. But before she could process those emotions, a storm of lightning lit up right in the middle of the domain of fire. The domain created by the fireballs was soon breached by a person who only had a chainmail armor worn on his torso now. And that chainmail armor had gotten slightly red due to the effects of the mana-generated fire. Aaron had come out from the other way of that barrage of fireballs. The skin of his torso was sizzling and getting burnt due to being in contact with the chainmail artifact he had worn under his clothes. Aaron quickly removed the artifact and stored it inside his storage. Most of his clothes were burnt off. Thankfully, he had protected the area around his groin by covering it with a layer of mana. So he was saved from being a laughingstock in the academy. But that's not all he had done. Aaron might be a masochist when he needed to be. But he was never suicidal. That's because he had already executed one of his spells before heading right into the storm of fire. The lightning element healing spell was running at its full effect and trying to mend his scorched and burnt skin. As a result, his bare torso had loads of tongues of lightning dancing over it. Of course, it didn't do anything to make Aaron suffer less in the fire. One needed a special kind of mindset to knowingly harm themselves for the sake of their benefits, even when they knew they could be healed later on. In his current condition, Aaron looked like a thunder god if he was a teen and short-statured. But he didn't care about his appearance. He had shown his performance to the mage to create deterrence in her mind. To show her that he could survive the worst she could do to him. And that temporary deterrence showed its effect. The girl subconsciously faltered when she saw the madman coming for her. She started retreating backwards to create a safe distance between them. Aaron only smiled after looking at the intended effect of his showmanship taking place right in front of him. He shouted at the dual berserkers. Dino, Ron. Now. Dino and Ron were standing at the other side. They quickly understood what Aaron was trying to do and approached the mage from 2 sides, trying to box her in. Everything happened within a few moments. The mage saw that she was soon going to get surrounded and had a determination filled in her eyes. She summoned another volley of fireballs around her and let her surroundings get consumed in them by detonating them all at once. She thought she would be safe inside her domain of fire. Unlike Aaron, her clothes were fireproof because of the element-specific rune inscriptions on them. Dino and Ron immediately got consumed in the storm of fire along with Aaron. All 3 are from different directions. Unlike Aaron, who didn't utter a word despite his 3rd-degree burns, Ron and Dino were pretty vocal about their situations. Their metal skin spell had again become their bane as the spell retained the effects of fire landed on it like a usual metal. Both of the berserkers somehow survived the firestorm. They survived by casting the metal skin spells on themselves for a short while before quickly dispersing it, then executing them again. They thought that now that they had crossed the domain of fire and closed in on the mage without her healer on the toe, things would soon move to the up and personal battles. Both of them activated their metal skin spells once again. And then approached the mage, who could be barely seen standing in the middle of the firestorm. Dino and Ron nodded at each other before recovering their berserking potions. They had already started running towards their opponent, who was gearing up another stack of spells by overdrawing on their mana. The berserkers were about to gulp their potions down. The mage was almost finished casting her stacked fire element spells. But suddenly Aaron came right in between them. He spread both his arms and murmured something to himself that his audience of 3 people couldn't hear. Blitzstorm, said Aaron, and then smiled at the berserkers. Dino and Ron were confused at first before opening their eyes wide in surprise. This was the biggest betrayal they had faced. That's because they were within Aaron's AoE spell when he executed it to supposedly target the opponent mage. The opponent mage was hit by Aaron's AoE spell too. She had already overdrawn on her mana. Plus, now she had to face the consequences of failed spell execution while facing the Butcher's lightning spell. At least to say she wasn't expecting Aaron to cast such spells while his teammates were within the range. That's what caught her off guard. She was expecting Aaron to hold onto his spells when he got in close range along with his teammates. But who knew Aaron had this planned from the beginning of the match? Aaron's Blitzstorm was detonated at this time, engulfing friends and enemies alike. Both sides were beaten and battered. So when the AoE went off, it made double the impact. Ron, Dino, and the enemy mage were zapped till their irises dilated. They were mere moments away from losing their consciousness. Chapter 175, Budding Emotions. Charmin was observing the battle with his mana sense, as was the enemy healer. They looked at each other from a distance, with surprise and confusion written all over their faces. The healer was the first to move. She tried to help her friend by going quickly near her, but she was stopped by Renita's mana bullets. She bit her tongue as she halted her advance. But then something amazing happened. When Charmin tried to do the same, Renita fired bullets just below his feet too, subtly hinting that he should not approach the dual berserkers. Aaron had told Renita to hold everyone off when he executed his AoE while the dual berserkers were within the range, under the guise of targeting the mage. This was an act of betraying the alliance. Aaron's team might never be able to ally with the rest of the good teams in their academic years. And Renita tried telling Aaron that as well. She knew he had understood that too. And yet he still chose to go with his self-harming strategy. The guy had planned this from the beginning when Ron and Dino had first approached him. Aaron had proposed a bunch of weird conditions while he was negotiating an alliance with Ron's raiders. One of those conditions was survival of the fittest. If anyone from Ron's team were to get neutralized in the battle, they would have to relinquish another 10% from their split per head. If two of the teammates from either team get neutralized in the battle, they'd lose 20% in total. Of course, Aaron made him and Renita get included in the same condition as well. That's how he made his conditions get okayed by the dual berserkers. The 10 or 20% might look small individually. But when the merps of this amount were at stake, the 10 or 20% became the difference between day and night. Dino and Ron fell unconscious, followed by the mage after facing the burnt of Aaron's AoE spell. Aaron could now claim the split of 85:15 in his favor by making the dual berserkers his prey. Aaron had not only taken another small revenge on his enemies, but he had also benefited from doing the same. Plus, the Butcher didn't want to ruin his image by openly betraying his alliance members. So he came with this compromise. Aaron would still be doubted for his intentions by some students, if not all. His sketchy way of executing his spell at the wrong time was questionable. But that would always stay as doubt and an open topic of discussion. Because there was no way to predict what would happen to the battle if he didn't make use of the opening the mage had kept open. When the storm of fire subsided, Aaron was the only one standing. Albeit with a pale face and haggard stance. His clothes were almost gone. His body's skin had tongues of lightning dancing over it, a sign of his healing spell getting executed at the time. Renita, what is the meaning of this? Charmin asked Renita with a lot of emotions written all over his face. The most dominant among them was anger that he was barely keeping in control. I was only looking after you. That domain of fire wasn't something you could barge in and come out with your own will. Said Renita and then pointed at the opponent healer. Besides, I think we should take care of her first instead of settling our disputes now. Charmin looked at the healer who was gripping his staff with both his hands as if anticipating an attack from any direction. Charmin was already pissed at Aaron. So he directed all his rage on the opponent. It didn't take long for the tank to neutralize the healer. Aaron's first inter-year battle of this timeline was won. With only 3 of his teammates left standing including him. All because he didn't forget to have one up over his assaulters of previous life while ensuring his benefits. Aaron, you shouldn't have. Renita spoke softly as she approached Aaron. She was looking at his current condition. The guy was barely standing on his 2 feet. But the Butcher didn't let her continue. He spoke up before the ranger had a chance to complete her sentence. Renita, I know what I have done. It's selfish and petty. And we might face problems in the upcoming inter-year wars. But I needed to do this. Said Aaron and held Renita's shoulder with her right hand for support. He let his entire body weight fall on her because he felt like his legs had become a jelly. The ranger supported him while having butterflies in her stomach because of her intimate proximity to Aaron. Why? I don't see why you want to set yourself against Ron and Dino. They were just your opponents. And this alliance was based on the fact that both sides could look past what happened in that match. Renita was having a difficult time keeping her excitement in check. But thankfully, Aaron's replies made it easy for her to do just that. That was because his answers were creating more questions for her. Aaron sighed. Then he opened the audio channel with her and continued in private. Let's just say I want them riled up on me. It's personal and you wouldn't get it? Nobody would. Said Aaron and looked at the dual berserkers lying unconscious on the ground. He could see law caretakers were approaching the injured for treatments. Renita also followed Aaron's gaze while mustering the courage to say what she was about to say. I would get it, Aaron, if you could just open up to me. At least I'll try. Renita was still looking at the scene unfolding in front of her, the caretakers approaching, then using potions to start healing the injured and trying to fix all the visible injuries. But one could see that she wasn't paying attention to any of the things. Aaron looked at Renita after he heard that. He had a slight change of heart after he understood what she was trying to say to him. Renita wanted to be with him. She wanted to be with a broken and cynic person like him without any seemingly hidden agenda. Chapter 176, Lovebirds and Right Words. Chapter 176, Lovebirds and Right Words. Some of Aaron's emotions that he thought were long dead showed signs of their existence in his heart. But he shook his head before smiling mirthlessly. Well, some injuries can't be seen with eyes. The usual remedies stop working on those injuries because they turn into scars that stay forever with you, no matter what you do. Aaron, try to trust your friends more. And I can become your confidant if you have some stories that you don't want to share with everybody. Aaron's eyes met Renita's and the latter's heartbeat increased. The mini-staring contest only lasted for a few moments. Aaron flashed a genuine grin at the ranger and said out aloud without using the audio channel. Renita, some stories are written more for the writer than they are for the readers. That being said, you have earned my trust with your actions today. And it is difficult for me to trust somebody. I don't know about being my confidant, but let's become friends first that are more than just teammates and rivals. We'll think about sailing the boat when we are on the shore. Renita also smiled after she heard Aaron's statements. She was expecting the recluse Aaron to act again. Perhaps her act to follow Aaron in his plans despite there being no advantage for her in doing so had enabled her to get close to him, even if just a little. Any progress was better than no progress for her. Friends then. Renita said while flashing a grin. Aaron returned that with a mild smile of his own before replying. Friends. If you two lovebirds are done talking, can we ask you to get treated first? Before you go get a room with those injuries and worsen them. Said one of the caretakers while smiling at the seeming couple. Aaron's jelly legs found some strength in them after he saw the lady caretaker looking at them with mischief while teasing them. He let go of using Renita as his support and somehow stood on his own. Renita too straightened up her clothes and hairdo for no apparent reason before saying to Aaron. Get treated, Aaron. You need it? I'm mostly fine, so a consumable potion should do the trick. Saying that, Renita snatched the potion vial from the caretaker's hands and walked out of the battle ring in a hurry. Aaron stayed there with the caretaker to get treated with her healing spells. But he wasn't the only one who was getting healed. Ron walked up to him while he was being treated. The berserker wasn't completely fine. But he was trying his best to get the answers he needed from a certain wretched person. Aaron Idril, Dino had told me that you were a cunning, manipulative, son of a bitch. But I didn't listen to him and got on board with your plan. We did everything by your rules. Yet you backstabbed us. Why? Asked Ron with his menacing gaze. Aaron had already expected a question like this. So he just shrugged his shoulders and replied nonchalantly. I think you are stretching it when you say I betrayed you. I wanted to catch the mage off guard. She would have bombarded me before I could get close to her. Plus, I was running out of mana after dealing with two rankers back to back. I saw the mage had left an opening in her defense when she was concentrating on you guys. I saw my chance and took it. Said Aaron and shifted his body a little to allow for the caretaker's healing spell to treat the blistering injury he had received on his back. His behavior irked Ron even more. Who are you trying to fool? I would have believed you if it wasn't for the condition you had placed earlier in our alliance contract. But looking at things now, you must have pre-planned this. At least have the guts to admit that you had planned to screw us from the beginning. Aaron returned Ron's sharp gaze with his cold eyes before replying. You know why I don't have to answer you? It's because I and Renita have carried you guys in this match. You couldn't do shit to Rudy's wreckers. And things would have been uglier had I not used my battle pass. Tell me one thing before you accuse me of anything. What did you guys do in this match? What is your contribution? Holding the opponents off so I could do your work for you? Is that it? Aaron purposely used his mana-imbued voice to reply to Ron's accusation. This was to make others realize the importance of his and Renita's presence in the match. He knew his actions could be interpreted in a completely different way with the use of the right words. A trick he had been underestimating almost all of his adult life. Ron was tongue-tied after he heard Aaron's rebuttal. He had no answer to Aaron's accusations, same as Aaron had no answer to his. But the difference between the two was Aaron was the one with the closing argument. This is not over yet, remember this, Aaron Idril. And you don't need me to tell you that our alliance is over. Ron started walking to Dino, who was still getting treated. He had regained his consciousness but was in no condition to stand up yet. Hold up, Ron. You are forgetting something, said Aaron after he got up from his seated position. He dusted off what remained of his trousers and continued. Our alliance stays intact until all our team members fight in the respective squads we have divided them into at least once. You can only break the alliance after that. This is one of the clauses of the alliance contract. Ron froze in his tracks after he heard Aaron's words. He regretted not listening to loudmouth Dino's pestering. Ron should have read the terms and conditions of the alliance contract carefully before signing over it. Now his negligence was going to bite him back in the ass. Chapter 177, Collateral Damage. Team Steve Stunners wish to use a battle pass. Steve announced firmly before the referee. He looked at Aaron standing outside the battle ring in the crowd of the audience after he did that. The butcher nodded at Steve after that declaration, giving him the confirmation he needed to proceed as planned. Steve Stunner had 3 of the White Raven crew's regular members, Steve, Becky, and Jake. The other 2 positions in the squad were filled by the regular members of the Ron's Raiders. Aaron Idril, what is the meaning of this? Why are you using your remaining battle pass on a losing team? Ron, who was standing not far from Aaron, couldn't help ask Aaron about his latest scheme. The latter chuckled at him before replying. You say that our alliance is going to stay in effect after the mandatory matches. I'll use my battle passes however I want. That's not for you to decide anyway, whether the alliance stays or disperses. But what will you gain by using the battle pass on the losing team? Ron was still trying to make sense out of Aaron's actions. By now he had understood that everything Aaron did was somehow preordained to be extremely advantageous to him. Who says Steve Stunners are going to lose? Aaron asked Ron with plain expressions on his face. He looked as if it was getting boring for him to talk to the berserker. You mean the battle pass that Steve is going to use is that potent? Sigh. Well, I'll give you a hint. Remember the clause that we had for the squads we deemed as losing squads? Ron then tried to again recollect the contract he had with Aaron regarding the alliance. The clauses seemed to have been the key. His mind slowly processed the advantages Aaron would gain after this losing team stops being a losing team. Ron and Aaron had divided their teams into multiple squads. As per their agreement, or according to how Ron's team was made to interpret, only the squad Aaron, Renita, Ron, and Dino was part of was supposed to win the inter-year ranking war, cutting the team's overall losses. The rest of the squads made up of the rest of the members from White Raven crew and Ron's Raiders were termed as bare minimum gangs. They were only meant to participate in their compulsory inter-year ranking wars and be done with them for the time being. That's why Ron didn't object when Aaron proposed that both their teams would bear the betting amount value individually as per the squad leader. That meant the squad Steve was leading would have its entire betting amount paid by members of White Raven crew. Ron's Raiders would have to pay the betting amount for the squad their team member was going to lead. Of course, that also meant that in the event of the squads winning their matches, the winning amount would go to the team who had paid the betting amount. This was one of the clauses of the alliance contract set specifically for the bare minimum gangs. Ron didn't find anything wrong with the clause at that point because either team was not gaining or losing anything because of their clauses. But that equalization was based on the fact that all the bare minimum gangs either won their matches or lost them. But what if the squad White Raven crew was responsible for winning their matches while the squad Ron's Raiders was in charge of losing theirs? Then that would benefit Aaron even more, and all the consequences of losing the matches will only be carried by Ron's team. Ron's rage was influencing him to forget about LA's rules and attack the wretched bastard known as Aaron Idril right then and there. He had shafted him and his entire team with the kind of manipulation he had woven into the very fabric of the alliance contract. The battle passes. You sly bastard, which one is it? The fact that you didn't use it in our match and let Steve have it to be used in his match means it is better than the one you had used earlier. Tell me which damn battle pass you handed over to your berserker, asked Ron while clenching his fist. His nails had dug into his skin as a result, making his hand bleed a little. But Ron was too angry to care about the self-inflicted injury he was currently suffering from. Why don't you find out yourself? Look. Aaron didn't mind the derogatory term he was assigned and pointed at the battlefield without looking at the angry berserker. Ron had to follow his direction and pay attention to the scenes unfolding on the battlefield again. The referee confirmed the battle pass Aaron had shared with Steve on his spectral screen and nodded before announcing loudly. Steve Austin is using the battle pass collateral damage. He can make up to 3 members of his team leave the battlefield. In exchange, his opponent team would have to withdraw 1 additional member in addition to the same number. Steve, you can now choose the members of your team as well as that of your opponent's team that will withdraw from the match. Ron's face lost its color after he heard the referee's announcement. This battle pass was tailored to pave the way for Aaron's betrayal. Objectively looking, the battle pass keep one out Aaron had used in his match had more value than the one Steve was going to use. That's because Aaron's battle pass didn't demand a sacrifice from his team to inflict damage on his opponent. Collateral damage was more useful only when the squad was confident in fighting with a reduced number of people than its projected arrangement. No other team would normally use this kind of battle pass as it would synchronize its team play heavily. But Steve, Becky, and Jake were perfectly fine with the other two members from Ron's Raiders getting eliminated. They preferred it that way too. That's because they were expecting the same form of betrayal from those two members as the one their hidden leader had pulled on their team in his match, should they be allowed to battle in Steve's squad. As he expected, Steve chose the only two members of Ron's Raiders to get withdrawn from the match. And in exchange, he was allowed to eliminate 3 members of the opponent team even before they started with the match. Steve did what he was asked to do by Aaron and eliminated 3 battle-oriented rankers from the opponent's team without wasting time pondering over it. Now Steve's squad had 3 members including him while his opponent had only 2. And one of them belonged to a non-combat class, a healer. Steve had already set a hefty betting amount before the start of the match. And least to say, his squad won the match, raking in a big haul of merbs. The next match the Alliance fought had a member of Ron's Raiders serving as the squad leader. It was a 7-person squad. Raimi, Anna, and Belle were part of this squad. Needless to say, Aaron's winning streak ended at this point and the squad lost big time. But the Butcher didn't plan on making the squad his remaining members were part of to win their battle anyway. He was okay with his newbie members testing the taste of defeat while ensuring that Ron's Raiders get almost a whole lot of nothing from the Alliance. With this, Aaron had made the maximum use of battle passes he had earned. He had even scored profit from the one that was self-inflicting in nature. Chapter 178, Does the Pursuit of Power Need a Reason? This goddamn mothering Aaron Idril has fucked us over one too many times now, Ron. I don't care what you say but... Dino, I agree with you. This wretched man needs to be taught a lesson for messing with us. Dino was pacing around in the courtyard of their dorm house. Ron was sitting idly at the nearby bench, looking at his friend with cold eyes. But the coldness radiated from them was not directed at Dino. It was meant for someone who had screwed their team and him while keeping a straight face doing it. Dino was surprised that Ron agreed with his opinion. He stopped his pacing and asked to confirm. You do? Then tell me the plan, already. I don't know about the others, but I'm in for sure. If we can catch him off guard. Dino's eyes radiated the pure excitement he felt from just thinking about enacting his revenge on Aaron. But that excitement was soon reined by Ron's next words. You do understand that jumping on any of the LA students would get us kicked out from the academy, right? Don't tell me you are just letting him go just like that because of these rules. When did I say that? I'm saying you don't have to be stupid to get your revenge, said Ron and got up from his position. He then started heading inside his home before stopping to look at his friend. I have already gotten some information on him. His daily chore includes going on border patrol. You know what I mean by that. Ron flashed a devilish grin at Dino who couldn't help return that with heartfelt laughter. Ha 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 ha. Yes, what happens in the forest, stays inside the forest. Dino followed Ron inside the dorm house after that. They had decided that they would not let Aaron treat them like some disposable pawns without facing any consequences. What they didn't know was that Aaron was baiting them to target him. The Butcher didn't know how or when the dual berserkers were going to attack him. But he was counting on them to do just that sooner than later. After all good hunters never follow their prey around. They just set their trap in anticipation and wait for them to fall into it. Aaron, you shouldn't have irked Ron's Raiders, man. I mean I do like that we raked in a hefty amount of merbs. But will it be beneficial for us in the long run? Aaron's team was at their usual place of training. They had come together to meet up in the evening, a day after their first inter-year war. Becky was scrutinizing Aaron's actions and she was not alone at it. Others were in silent agreement with her. That's how she got the confidence to speak in front of Aaron who was observing his teammates silently. Renita pitched in right after that. Hate to admit it, Aaron. But Becky is right. We have pissed off a lot of second years with our high betting amounts and then won them back with even higher prize money. Plus, the other top first year students would hesitate to tag team with us after they have seen how Ron's Raiders ended up allying with us. Sigh. We have won big, there's no doubt about it. But we will have to brace ourselves for the consequences heading our way. Aaron was quiet at that point. He had the sudden urge to start his old habit of smoking the roll of fire-cured leaves listening to his teammates' complaints. He rolled his eyes before finally speaking up. There will always be consequences, guys. No matter what you do. Even the act of inaction can lead to some severe consequences. Trust me, I know this better than you do. So all you can do in this case is choose your actions right and anticipate the consequences. At least in this way, you are in control of what's coming for you. Becky shook her head right after Aaron said what he said. She took a long breath before replying. Aaron, that's a euphemism. What you say makes sense, but it isn't practical. We had no reason to pick a fight with Ron's raiders. Even with normal winnings, we would have still benefited aplenty. Why go for sudden profits when your regular income is steady and enough for your sustenance? Almost everybody agreed with Becky except Renita and Remy. Renita was already an ambitious girl even before meeting Aaron. And meeting him had only amplified that drive. Remy had become a staunch Aaron supporter now. He would agree to anything Aaron would say and do. The guy with the lisp had become Aaron's yes man. That's why his teammate had asked him to keep quiet. That and the fact that his speeches would often turn the serious mood into one of uncontrollable laughter. Aaron looked at Becky while narrowing his eyes. It looked like he was trying to decide on something in his mind. Then he shook his head before putting his point forward. Why go for sudden profits when your regular income is steady and enough for your sustenance? Ha ha ha. Becky, if you want to stay mediocre, do it after you get out of the academy. Don't try to drag me or my team members into that mediocrity with you. These are precious years of our lives. We need to grab every opportunity we could get to make it big after we get out of the academy. And staying low-key all the time won't ever let us become the best version of ourselves. I get that you prefer steady progress over these types of risky moves. And I can understand where it is coming from. Rankers can be revenge-seeking animals after all. But staying in your comfort zone all the time will make you a toothless tiger in the future. Your ranking journey would stagnate with an attitude like yours. The ranker society has restrictions. And low-level rankers like us get the brunt of it. But the same restrictions become less restrictive as we climb the ranking ladder. Why is that? Because a single high ranker can have a say over a bunch of low rankers due to his exceptional individual powers. The merps I have now will help us get close to achieving that power. You will come to know about this in the future. Anna was the first to talk after she heard Aaron's speech that sounded like a prediction. But why seek a faster route to the ranking journey at the cost of hurting or making an enemy out of others? Anna blinked innocently after she said that. And Aaron felt like he had a headache listening to her question. He massaged his temples gently with his fingers before replying. Why do you need a reason to seek power? You seek power because it's the most fundamental part of our lives. Money, political power, social status, are all secondary to ranking prowess. Remember this from now on. Don't try to seek the reason behind why you want to become a powerful ranker. Treat it as your necessity to live a life that is worth living. Your kindness has no value if it stems from your helplessness. Only when you are powerful enough can you be allowed to be kind. Said Aaron and walked towards the checkpost that would allow him to get outside LA grounds. It was about time he visited Agatha and checked on her progress. His departing figure was thought-provoking in the eyes of his teammates. Chapter 179, Fruits of Labor P1. Uncle Jack, how's the progress so far? Agatha doing good? Aaron asked Jack Sullivan, Jake's father. He was at the latter's shop in the city of Lion Hearts. Agatha was working as Aaron's contact and one of the store managers. Yep. Everything's fine. The channels have been established. I have taught Agatha a few things about the work we do here. The girl is a fast learner. She is picking up everything at an exceptional rate. Agatha had started living on the upper floor of the shop. Aaron had arranged everything that was needed as a daily necessity for her. The trio was now gathered at her place for the talk. The anthrope wasn't happy her master was asking a third person about her progress. She preferred that he ask her directly. But to Aaron, Jack's perspective was more important. Good. Don't worry. I will send you consistent supplies of goods through Agatha. You just make sure that you only sell my goods to your trusted sources. We don't want things to go out of hand and attract heat unnecessarily. Jack nodded and agreed with Aaron's words. Yeah, your products aren't meant for a mass audience anyway. The potion bombs already have a steady purchase channel. It is stalked by nobles and some authorities of the kingdom. Your aphrodisiac vials can also create a rift between the shop and female rankers. So that is something I've kept under the counter as well. Of course, unlike the potion bombs, these products have more customers. And they can be sold for a huge profit margin. So keep on churning these products. Hee. If Jake learns the poti one from you and gets just as good, our profits will double. Aaron nodded before replying. That is indeed good to hear. Don't worry about Jake, uncle. He'll be a good poti one. But he needs time. And I would prefer if you take Agatha with you whenever the selling of my products is involved. I also had some other work that I could use your help with. Said Aaron and looked expectantly at Jack. The latter just patted the teen's shoulder before answering. Don't be shy, young man. This old merchant has a lot of contacts. I'll take care of whatever you need. Just say the word. Jack assured Aaron with his merchant smile and attitude. The latter just nodded his head as if he was only waiting for those words to get spoken by the merchant before saying. All right. I won't hold back then. I want C rank potion bombs or killer arrays of the same rank, at least 2 of them. When can I get them? Jack was still smiling when he heard Aaron's words. But that smile soon broke into an ugly expression when he heard Aaron's demands. He stuttered in a speech to confirm what he had just heard. Why, you want C-rank potion bombs? Aaron nodded plainly before explaining. I know C-rank potion bombs are weapons of mass destruction. So I won't press on that demand. But I believe C-rank killer arrays can be arranged. I want the ones that are meant for slaying the beasts of the same rank without injuring their bodies. Jack regretted boasting about his contacts to Aaron. He smiled mirthlessly before trying to explain to the team the hurdles in getting those things. Aaron, what you said about the potion bombs applies to the killing arrays as well. It's just that the killing arrays for animals are relatively easier to get. That too is only applicable if we are talking about F or E rank animals and killing arrays. Things get exponentially difficult to get when they reach D rank. Yet, you want C rank items, which would be even more so. And you even need 2 of them. Even with my underground and black market contacts, they'll not be easy to get. Plus, the kind of extals we are talking about buying those things. Oh, money is not the problem, Uncle Jack. Just locate them and get them as soon as possible. Aaron cut the merchant off in his speech and fast-tracked his purchase order. The latter had no choice but to just give up on explaining things to the teen. That's because he believed that Aaron would have the money to walk the talk if he had said so. Now he had to again deal with the shady people in a shady way to make the boy's wish come true. Jack wondered if Aaron being friends with his son was a good idea. Too late. Now I'm stuck with this dangerous kid, said Jack to himself and left Aaron and Agatha to their devices. The master and slave had a few things to talk about. Some weeks after Aaron's visit to the city of Lion Hearts, Aaron completed his training regime with exhaustion coursing through his veins. He laid flat on his back over his courtyard's ground and recalled his status window. Rank status. Intraclass individual 11th place holder. Intraclass team base 3rd place holder. Interclass individual 23rd place holder. Interclass team base 16th place holder. Inter-year individual unranked. Inter-year team base 37th place holder. Merit points 36,549. HP 4.6/4.6. MP 5.5/5.5. STR 2.9. AGI 4.7. Int 3.5. BTP 21. Lightning element, 4-star, movement type, blitz steps. Lightning element, 4-star, defense type, blitz shield. Lightning element, 4-star, attack type, blitz bolt. Lightning element, 4-star, area of effect, blitz storm. Lightning element, 4-star, healing type, blitz heal. Time element, 4-star, miscellaneous, sedated perception. Time element, 3-star, miscellaneous, ingredient age expedite. Time element, 2-star, miscellaneous, ingredient age reverse. Time element, 3-star, movement type, stunning speed. Fire element, 4-star, attack type, fire snake. Fire element, 4-star, attack type, fireball. Fire element, 4-star, attack type, fire breath. Planks, 30 minutes/30 minutes. Stretching position 1, 5 minutes/5 minutes. Stretching position 2, 5 minutes/5 minutes. Stretching position 3, 5 minutes/5 minutes. Aaron felt that sought-after high one feels after working out after he looked at his BTP value again. All his hard work and his extended technique practicing sessions weren't failing him. He was just 3 units away from entering the upper stage of the F rank. Chapter 180, Fruits of Labor P2. Aaron was just 3 units away from entering the upper stage of the F rank. Of course, he knew that the path of a ranker wasn't so linear. There existed bottlenecks and lack of experiences in one's field, preventing most rankers from quickly progressing further in their ranking journeys. So what he considered to be merely 3 units of difference in BTP value might turn out to be a huge mountain to scale for him. But he wasn't discouraged by that realization. After all, this was Aaron's personal best in ranking progression in terms of speed. He would have never thought that he would be able to get this close to the upper stage of the novice rank this early in this timeline. Aaron figured that his current hard work or past timelines experiences weren't the only reasons for his surprising progress. He could feel that the transformation he had been through by fusing with Reen also had a hand to play in it. The pursuit of power doesn't need a rhyme or reason, thought Aaron to himself and smiled. Then he looked at his ranking status and the same smile grew wider. Aaron had performed breathtakingly in his ranking wars. The low ranks were due to him not gaining enough battle points, which in turn was due to him not participating in the ranking wars as much as the other top rankers placed above him. Aaron filled the gap left by quantity with quality. He was managing so many things at once, so it was only natural he couldn't initiate as many ranking wars as he wanted to. Aaron didn't ignore his poti-winning practice either during these weeks. Or more like, he couldn't. That's because he was now injecting many of his products into the market, thanks to Agatha and Jack's joint efforts. Aaron had bought 2 time element spells at exaggerated prices from Levine de Montmorency that acted as the support type spells for his potion making. Ingredient Age Expedite allowed him to expedite the age of the ingredients, allowing him to get the ingredient at the right state for better potion quality. Ingredient Age Reverse did the opposite of Ingredient Age Expedite. But it had its limitations, as indicated by its 2-star status. Still, these 2 support type spells helped Aaron a lot in his late night poti-wunwing sessions, enabling him to dish out more and better potions and other potion-related items. Aaron had also bought a movement type time element spell that made his entire body get attuned to the effects of diluted time, not just his mind. Now when he executed sedated perception and stunning speed together, he didn't feel like he was immersed in the body of water. The sheer movement resistance his body had to fight with while he was executing sedated perception had now turned into a mild inconvenience when it combined the effects of 2 time element spells. Of course, the gem had also passively helped the butcher in adopting the 3 new time element spells together in a short time to their perfection. But he didn't gain any insights into these spells, contrary to his expectations that stemmed from his experience with learning sedated perception. Aaron figured out that the gem slumber might have something to do with it. Apart from the 3 time element spells, Aaron had also added 3 fire element spells in his arsenal. His lightning element affinity granted him a bit of an edge when it came to using fire element spells. Aaron had to learn the fire element spells because he had faced the ineffectiveness of his lightning element spells against some of his opponents with certain elemental affinities. The most bothersome opponents for him were those with earth element affinity. Aaron's lightning element spells would always fail to damage the earth element opponents the way he desired. He would use fire element spells against such opponents to mitigate his disadvantage. Of course, Aaron's fire element spell executions weren't as potent as his lightning element ones. They consumed more mana and produced average results. But that didn't stop the butcher from adding extra cards to play in his deck. Aaron had to learn the fire element spells the old school way, through practice and burnt skin. He used his ranking wars as means to test his new spells, making him unpredictable sometimes. Aaron's opponents couldn't even begin to guess what this wretched close combat expert was going to do in his battles. He would use his opponents to perform R&D on them, making them go all out in their rage. That would bring the butcher to the brink of his defeat. Only then he would use his standard spells to turn the result of the match around. Aaron was now called a low-key masochist because of his performances in the ranking war. But he didn't care about his opponents or what was being talked about behind his back. Or more like he couldn't, since he had dipped his hands in one too many pies. The 36,549 merps Aaron's status window was displaying wasn't the real projection of his accumulated wealth during this period. That was because his merps balance was considerably reduced after buying 2 time element spells from Levine and 1 time element spell from LA's novice treasury along with 3 fire element spells. Aaron had risked offending the dual berserker earlier than his planned retaliation because of this very progress he had blessed himself with. He knew having more merps was the key to expanding his battle powers as well as his poti-wunwing skills in a short time. Aaron had many sleepless nights, extended training sessions, ranking battles with self-induced hardships, and various lectures to attend while juggling his apprenticeship duties. He had used every bit of advantage he could to make such progress in all his open fronts possible for him. Furthermore, the effects of his hard work weren't limited to his status window alone. Aaron's growth spurt had kicked in due to his enhanced training activities, making him a few inches taller. Against his wishes, Aaron's beard was soon going to make a comeback. And he felt that it was going to be fuller than before. He loathed grooming his facial hair, so this wasn't welcoming news for him amid the plenty of good ones. Aaron still boasted a lean build. But his musculature was now more prominent than before. His mana signature and his presence also radiated a sharp aura that he was now finding a little difficult to mask. Aaron looked completely different from his past self in the previous timeline. He was visually and otherwise on a different level than the sorry-ass him he was before the time reset. The butcher felt like he was now more in control of his future path, thanks to these obvious and not so obvious transformations. Chapter 181, Bonus Chapter Hunter and the Prey. Aaron looked at his status window one more time before retracting the spectral screen. He was more or less on schedule with his plans. But for his next set of plans, he needed to be Levin's disciple. The C-rank beasts guarding the Malva Hibiscus were the hurdles he needed to take care of first before getting the discipleship. That's why he had requested the killing arrays from Jack Sullivan. Agatha came to the LA's checkpoint and delivered Aaron what he had demanded from Jack. Sullivan Sr. had to pull a lot of strings to provide Aaron with 2 C-rank killing arrays of the lightning element. Of course, Aaron had paid a hefty amount of money in the form of extals to get these 2 array scrolls. He had to spend a sizable chunk of wealth from his cultist hideout fund to get these. But Aaron knew it was going to be worth it as long as he had the intact bodies of the 2 C-rank beasts. And things would only turn for the better when he gets his hands on Malva Hibiscus. Now he needed baits to be placed over the killing arrays. the baits he had prepared for some time now. Ken, I think we should split today's border patrol between the two of us instead of covering the entire area together. What do you say? Aaron asked Ken at the checkpost that connected LA grounds to Beast Sanctuary. The former was confused before replying. But Master Marla's instructions said we need to perform border patrol together. Why do you want to change the routine all of a sudden? Aaron already had his answer ready. He shrugged his shoulders before replying. To tell you the truth, I've taken up a few missions from Bisank and I need to complete them. I'll probably go deep into the forest. So I might as well complete my border patrol while I'm at it. I need some daylight before finding a temporary place to rest. And completing the entire border patrol like usual would make things a little difficult for me in that regard. Realization dawned on Ken after he heard Aaron's truths mixed into lies. He agreed with the latter's suggestion and parted ways from him. This was the moment Aaron was waiting for. He didn't wait any moment and traveled in the opposite direction to Ken, deeper into the forest. Ernie, they are still following you like usual. And this time, they seem to stick close to you. Reen reported to Aaron after stretching her mana sense into the surroundings. This was not the first time Aaron was getting followed. The followers were, of course, Ron and Dino. Aaron knew and expected that they had been doing recon on him after their alliance was disbanded. Up till now, Aaron had Ken with him on his border patrol. And he hadn't taken up any missions from Bisank to head into the forest. So when Aaron went to Bisank and took some missions for himself, he knew the news was going to reach the dual berserkers soon. What Ron and Dino didn't know was that their cover trailing wasn't so covered to Aaron, who had Reen's mana sense at his disposal. Yet he didn't change his direction or pace and continued moving forward. Soon the area that separated the neutral zone from that of the Amazonian region came into Aaron's view. He knows things are going to get exciting as soon as he crosses the boundary line and steps into the Amazonian region. Aaron didn't rush. He paused for a while and rested. He also took out his food supplies and started fixing himself a hearty sandwich. Only after making sure that his preparations were ready did Aaron move from his position. This wasn't a completely risk-free endeavor for Aaron either. That's why he had cold feet the very first time he had done his study on the C-rank beasts. Not long after Aaron crossed the boundary line and stepped further into the forest, he heard a voice from behind him. Aaron Idril, long time no see. Aaron turned around to see Ron and Dino standing not far from him, and his expressions turned grim. What are you two doing here? I don't think you have registered yourself with the Bisank. Are you two perhaps following me? Said Aaron while sharpening his gaze. But Dino and Aaron could see a trace amount of fear the butcher was trying to hide behind his brave face. Dino couldn't help gloat in front of his potential prey. Hee. Aaron Idril, you fucking, conniving, backstabbing, son of a bitch. You've tried our patience, you know that. Son of a bitch? How does he know about my mother so well? Thought Aaron before replying to the loudmouth. I've tried your patience. What do you mean by that? And make it quick. I'm running on a schedule here. Dino started laughing menacingly after hearing Aaron's nonchalant reply. He had to take a breather from his laughter to reply to his former opponent. Do you know why you could go scot-free after screwing over us the way you did? I think you know. And that made you cocky in pulling those stunts on us. Harming LA students on LA grounds counts for suspension as the least possible punishment. But it doesn't talk about the incidents that happen outside it. Do you know why? The reason is simple. The Academy wants us to be tactical in our ways of settling disputes. Do you know where we are standing now? Hee. I'll give you a hint. Not LA grounds, that's for sure. Aaron didn't seemingly get unfazed by Dino's naked threat and verbally bit back. Ha? You two remember that you couldn't beat me even after tag teaming, right? Why do you want to humiliate yourself when there's nobody here? You want to get your ass handed to you in secrecy. Dino's face turned red after he heard Aaron words that stung like aggravated bees. He was about to reply with even more curses directed at Aaron. But he was stopped from doing the same with his friend Ron around. Ron didn't want to gloat like Dino. But he wanted his victim to know about the predicament he had found himself in. So he spoke up next. Aaron, maybe you haven't realized that you are in trouble here. Have you? Thought Aaron to himself as he maintained his outwardly stoic expressions. Chapter 182, Grim Realization. Ron said in a threatening tone. What are you planning to do? It's not like I can't defend myself against two of you. My lightning element alone gives me all the advantage I need to bust your balls. Said Aaron while folding his hands. He knew the duo must have taken some countermeasures this time against his lightning element spells for it to be this confident in itself. That might have been true. But don't you think we might have known that and we did something about it? Yeah? Like what? Said Aaron with an uncaring attitude. Like this. Said Ron and showed Aaron what he was wearing under his shirt by pulling the collar to the side. Aaron understood where the berserker's confidence came from. They were wearing lightning spell-proof armor under their clothes. F-rank disposable artifacts, Aaron guessed to himself. These types of armor wouldn't last long, because the runes inscribed on them would lose effectiveness with every barrage of spells it was hit with. But Aaron also knew it'd take a lot more effort than he cared to admit for him to exhaust their armor with his lightning element spells. But that didn't deter him from his stance. You do that? I've also been dabbling in fire element spells, don't you? The artifacts won't protect you from the elemental spells they are not designed to protect you against. Dino was the one to pitch in this time. Ha 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 ha. Empty threats. We know that you don't have full mastery over your fire element spells. And your derived elemental affinity can only give you so much edge while you are using fire spells. I think we can deal with those fire spells you throw at us just fine. Want to test out? Dino looked eager to beat the shit out of Aaron. The latter shook his head after listening to his statement before replying. It seems I'll have to teach you that it's not the lightning spells you should be wary about. It's the one who casts them, said Aaron and ran blitz bolt through his arms. The blitz steps also showed the signs of being executed on Aaron's legs. Dino and Ron both got tense at that time. They had worn lightning-resistant armors, sure. But they knew they couldn't do anything about Aaron's close combat attacks that focused on weapon injuries. They both had their metal skin spells. But that alone could not prevent their attacker from injuring their vital spots through blunt force generated by the weapon's impact. Dino and Ron both executed their signature spells. They both turned into metal humanoids and drew their weapons. But what they saw next froze them in their tracks and numbed their minds. That's because the guy that had just threatened them with severe retaliation went ahead and ran from the battlefield. That's right. Aaron ran as soon as he saw the dual berserkers preparing themselves for the battle. Ron and Dino had thought about Aaron's lightning element spells. And they were also confident about the fire element spells that he had displayed during recent battles. But they had never thought about the possibility that a cold-blooded guy like Aaron would run away from them. Aaron's movement spell had reached a new level when his BTP rose to 21. The lightning element, close combat-oriented technique he was practicing prioritized his agility stat. And yet Aaron only showed his normal movement speed. Something that he had shown in his ranking battles till now. That was because Aaron wanted the dual berserkers to follow him. Otherwise, he would have left them behind by now. Therefore Aaron ran. And surprisingly, the dual berserkers followed him. They cursed his name and his non-existent family while doing so. The guy had become an unpredictable menace for them. Even taking revenge on him could be considered as putting yourself through a series of torture. The chase took place for a while. Until Reen informed him about his path laid ahead. Ernie, the old beast's territory is up ahead. You'll enter it in a few moments. Aaron's eyes lit up when he heard that. He took out one killing array scroll from his ID stone. The scroll was almost 5 feet in vertical length. And it was about 5 times its vertical length when stretched open horizontally. Carrying this unusually big array scroll was a tough thing to do when the movement spell was in full effect. That's why Aaron only took out the scroll when it was the right time to do so. Ron and Dino were not far behind him. Aaron had maintained just enough distance for them to follow him and not see what he was up to. Aaron quickly stretched open the array scroll as soon as he barged into the old beast's territory. And he did the same with another array scroll at a safe distance from the first location. Aaron's pursuers could be seen coming from him as soon as he finished his preparations. He couldn't help but smile cunningly after he saw his one set of praise was right on time. And now he only needed the mana beasts to make their entrance, his second set of praise. By now, the array scroll had been crumpled into dust and the array had been stretched on the ground. The runes were now exuding faint lights. But they weren't overly prominent yet. Have guts to fight us, you conniving rat bastard. Dino spoke loudly as soon as Aaron was in his sight again. He could now only see Aaron as his target of attention. The berserker didn't pay attention to the array layout exuding a faint light behind Aaron. But Ron was still level-headed. That small detail didn't fail to register in his mind, enabling him to have a grim realization. It's a trap. He couldn't help mumble to himself after he connected a few dots. Chapter 183, Trap Prey P1. Ron couldn't help mumbling to himself after he connected a few dots of the entire event in his head. But Dino was already rushing towards Aaron before he could warn his friend about a possible risk involved in approaching their target. Dino, you meathead, just stop right there. Ron tried to warn his friend about something. But Dino felt like he had waited long enough to take care of this wretched person. Ron, if you want to back out for the fear of possible repercussions from anyone from LA, then go ahead and retreat. I'm not going to. Dino was saying this while traveling at an even faster pace than before. Ron was right behind him. Aaron was almost right within their berserk's charge range. Dino retrieved his berserking potion from his storage space. He was a little hot-headed, yes. But he wasn't stupid enough to think that he'd get rid of the close combat expert in front of him without breaking a sweat. There was a chance he would have to pay the price of underestimating Eren he couldn't be able to pay. That's why Dino decided to go full throttle from the get-go to confront his opponent. Dino came closer. He was just some meters away from Eren now. He was about to drink the berserking potion when he heard the latter say his next words. "Rin, now," said Eren, and commanded Rin to spread her mana sense and make hostile contact with the two C-rank beasts in the vicinity. He also made her fuse with his body and elevate his BTP value to that of an E-ranker. Then he ran his mana through the pebble-like item that was inscribed with runes. This was the controller of the killing array that was currently standing inside. And Dino was now within the array's area of effect as well. All Dino felt with his mana sense was that Eren's stats had suddenly shot for stars after he heard him say something to someone named Rin. He couldn't know Eren's BTP value, but the managed signature he gave off at that time enabled Dino to understand that his opponent was not an F-ranker anymore. What the holy fuck? How can you break into E-rank just like that? I knew there was something fishy going on with you. Ha ha ha. Ron, here's another reason for us to proceed with our plans. This guy is a treasure trove of secrets. Secrets we can use and get benefited from. Even after knowing about Eren's transformation, Dino didn't stop his advance. Eren had to admit one thing about the guy. He had selected the right path as a ranker. It's just that his choice in choosing his enemies was something he found faults in. Eren retreated from the opposite side and suddenly chose a cross-sectioned path. That inspired Dino to chase his opponent even more. But what happened next took the berserker some time to register in his head. Dino saw Eren's legs getting coated with a mass of slime. And then that mass of slime coated his entire body in the next moment completely before getting absorbed in his body and changing it. It looked like the skin of purple lightning snake. It seemed that Eren was using the beast contract spell. But Ron and Dino both knew the spell wouldn't alter the caster's BTP value and make them change upscale their rank. And then Eren just disappeared from his initial position and appeared at a distance that was outside the array's area of effect. He showed his real speed equipped with his time element spells, allowing the dual berserkers to understand that the chase was just a ruse. Eren didn't mind that his true agility potential was discovered by his enemies. It was too late for them anyway. He then pressed on the center of the array's control with his mana-imbued fingers. And the whole array lit up instantly. Dino saw the ground beneath him had been lit up with intricate inscriptions he couldn't comprehend. He was confused before a slight shadow of worry crept up from behind in his head. Dino tried to advance towards the perpetrator of this weird phenomenon. But there was now one problem. He couldn't channel his mana through his body anymore. And his charge soon came to a halt when his feet were stuck to the ground. The inscriptions had climbed up on Dino's legs, making him freeze in his tracks literally. He was meat on the chopping block because of his current situation. Dino started cursing Eren. Then he started calling Ron for help. But he soon found his best friend Ron. He was retreating. He had started retreating the moment he saw the array lit up. By now Ron had come to realize that Eren wasn't someone they could mess with. The guy's combat potential was one thing. His lightning element spells could also be managed. But he had practically planned this whole event even before they did after he saw the array set up. And that wasn't all. The conniving bastard could alter his body stats to make himself an E-ranker. Ron could bet his left kidney on an assumption that this wasn't all Eren had in his arsenal. But it was all too late. Eren soon caught up with the retreating Ron and grabbed him by his neck from behind. Eren had also changed his stature for better control, and that had made it easy for him to lift Ron in the air by his neck. Eren then dragged the smart berserker towards the second array he had laid not far from the first one and thrown him inside the array's area of effect. Then he retrieved another array controller and activated the array with its help, putting Ron in the same boat as his friend. Eren, listen to us. I don't know what you are up to. But let me be very clear about a few things. We only meant to scare you. Not permanently injure you or kill you. I'm sorry it had to come to this. But we can always start again. Ron immediately changed his strategy and tried to talk practically with Eren. But his plans were interrupted by his very own friend. Ron, you scaredy cat. This is just some trapping array. Why are you acting like you are going to die by this wretched rat's hand? Trust me, this conniving bastard doesn't have it in him to. Dino was going to continue his dissing of Eren when he suddenly felt a heavy mana sense swept over him. He felt like his heart had stopped beating and the world around him had lost its color. This was the effect of a high-ranked entity consciously making its presence known. Chapter 184, Trapped Prey P2. Ron wasn't in any better condition either. He felt the same effects as Dino, but unlike his friend, he could actually feel the level of threat coming from that effect. D rank. Ron couldn't gauge the strength of the one who had used their mana sense on them just now, so he immediately assigned the threat to the highest ranking entity he was familiar with. But soon the intensifying fear Ron felt from the incoming enemy made him change his initial estimation. He had beads of sweat on his forehead as he came to a new possibility. C rank. It's a motherfucking C-rank mana beast. Dino, my friend. We are fucked. Aaron didn't wait as soon as he sensed that dreaded mana sense washing over him. He made use of Reen's enhancement of his body and ran the blitz steps to his fullest potential. His body stats had also been strengthened because of the demon's beast active fusion. So Aaron ran again, this time leaving 2 baits behind him. Now that the arrays had been activated, Butcher operated them through their controllers. And made them stay invisible while retaining the effects they had on dual berserkers. The old beast came first and saw Dino and Ron both staying within the disputed territory. A territory between it and the young mana beast who was trying to expand its influence. So it focused on Dino first because he was closest to it between them. Then came the second beast. Dino pissed his pants after he saw the second mana beast of the same rank making its appearance. He tried his hardest to control his bladder. But the second beast's hostile mana sense just made his body act on his own. Ron wasn't in any better condition either. He was on his knees, still unable to move. He didn't understand what was happening to him right now. Why did they end up here, in front of 2 mana beasts whose rank they couldn't comprehend for real? Ron understood that Aaron had used both of them as baits. The mana beasts were very perceptive. They didn't know what the array or its layout was. But they could sense the dangers getting radiated from it all the same. That's why Aaron needed bait in the form of Dino and Ron to make the beast's basic instincts take over. Instincts to kill the intruders in their territories first before worrying about the consequences. These instincts had made the beasts challenge Reen's control over them at the time of their mana senses confrontation. Aaron knew that Reen's status as a demon beast wasn't high enough for them to ignore their territorial instincts. So the beasts would certainly not care anything about 2 puny F-rankers. And they would try to eliminate the other party at all costs. And that's what happened. The beasts growled at each other as if coming to a ceasefire. They then focused their attention on their prey. Both the beasts stepped into their killing arrays, a moment Aaron was waiting for from afar. He activated the trapping mechanism for the arrays at their full strengths. The beasts were just a few meters away from their prey when they felt their bodies getting devoid of the ability to make use of their mana. Both the beasts felt something was wrong as they tried to bolt from their positions. But their struggles weren't fruitful. Especially the old beast that was already injured. It felt like it couldn't move at all. The beasts tried all their methods. They even tried to eliminate the berserkers in front of them, thinking eliminating them was the key behind their liberation. But just like Dino and Ron, the beasts too had lost the ability to employ mana or make use of their mana sense. 2 sets of prey were trap-head. Just as Aaron wanted them to. He came out from hiding at that time and reached the area between the 2 arrays to observe the arrays functioning. Aaron had 2 array controllers in each of his hands. He tossed them in the air and did some juggling acts as he paid attention to the beast's movements. Aaron had to admit that the huge sum he had paid for these arrays was worth every extol. He wouldn't have even thought of messing with 2 C-rank beasts on his own in his current ranking status if it wasn't for these arrays. Aaron was also worried about the array's operability. The cynic in him thought that there was a chance that he might get duped. Of course, he wasn't doubting Jack. But those who provided Jack with these products. So when he saw that the arrays were working just the way they had been advertised, Aaron felt some relief. He was about to press the detonation button on the arrays when he heard a faint voice coming from Ron. Ron was struggling hard to breathe because of his proximity to the C-rank beast. He was sure that the beast wouldn't have to do anything as he would have passed out in its presence long ago if the array hadn't suppressed its mana. The way he saw it, Ron had only one way to get out of his situation. Talk with the one who had put them in the very situation. That's why when he saw Aaron approaching them, the sane berserker tried to have a word with him. Aaron Idril. We are sorry for targeting you. We really are. Look, you can take everything that I own in my ID stone as a form of compensation. These arrays you have used are clearly C-rank arrays meant for the mana beasts. You must have spent a fortune on them. I'll see to it that you get that money back with my connections. And I can. Aaron shook his head and cut him off with his reply. Offers tempting, Ron. Not going to lie. But I don't like to leave loose ends behind if I can help it. Chapter 185, Illegal Slave Contract. Aaron's nonchalant attitude turned Ron's mood and expression sour. But he couldn't just give up just like that. Aaron, what would you gain by killing us? It's not like we have a blood feud. And think about what would happen if LA comes to find out. Your life will be ruined. I'm saying this to stay alive, I agree. But it doesn't change the fact that it's the truth. Instead, why don't we sign a contract that's completely in your favor? I'll agree to any condition as long as it's feasible for me. Aaron kept on juggling with his 2 array controllers while hearing what his prey had to say before he executed what he had decided to do from earlier. He said this while continuing his circus act. Well, I can certainly go for the hush-hush contract. But it's not that secure and it can be easily breached. It is more convenient for me to kill you and blame it on the Amazons. I'll just have to carve the Amazonian symbol on any nearby tree's trunk. Then it'll be taken as you were killed because of trespassing into their territory. It's a weak excuse, but it's the one that'll still work. After all, nobody fucks with those crazy high-rank femme fatale. Hee hee. Ron's eyes opened wide in surprise that immediately turned into his despair. Aaron was right. The possibility of Amazonian sentries killing them was low, but never zero. Some of the ladies were known to be hostile to outsiders even without the rhyme or reason. Ron and Dino thought the Amazonian region to be an ideal place for them to take care of Aaron. But only now did they realize that it was in fact a carefully selected region by their enemy to take care of them while facing the least amount of repercussions. If there were going to be any repercussions heading the vile character's way in the first place. Knowing Aaron till now, Ron was sure the paranoid guy like Aaron would have even more countermeasures ready even if things do turn haywire for him. Ron knew he needed to come up with something that could bring some assurance to the wretched person in front of him to make him spare their lives. A way that can put them at the disadvantage so that Aaron will at least consider sparing them. Slave contract. We are willing to sign a slave contract with you. Aaron raised his eyebrows after he heard Ron finally speaking what he wanted him to speak. Slave contract, huh? I know how this idea sparked into your head. You must have done a background check on my information again and found out I now have a legal slave. A slave contract could work. Tighter restrictions. No easy way to breach the contract. And I'll always know something is wrong if and when that does happen. Good job, Ron. I'm willing to consider your proposal, said Aaron and looked at the beasts that were growling in his presence. They have sensed that their lack of movement and entrapment has something to do with him. So they were trying to intimidate him with their gazes. Too bad, Aaron didn't have any fear of the two beasts. That's because he was by now confident in the two arrays he had spent a sizable part of his fortune on. Dino was mad after he heard Ron's statements that conveyed that the guy had lost all his backbone after the entrapment. He couldn't help shouting at his old friend. Ron, for fuck's sake, man, have some dignity in dying at least. There's no need to beg or apologize to this conniving bastard. We will die fighting. Ron was pretty mad after hearing Dino's comments. He verbally bit back in response. Once a meathead, always a meathead. Get this one thing clear in your head, Dino. You can live with dignity or shame. But there's no dignity to be had in dying. Dying is dying. And I don't want to die. If you want to die while keeping your so-called honor unsullied, go ahead. Be my guest. But don't drag me into your suicide fest, said Ron while looking angrily at Dino. His gaze told the latter only one thing. Either get killed by Aaron or get with the program. But Ron didn't need to convince Dino much. Aaron's next words did the job just fine. Ron, if the man wants to die, let him die. No need to get angry at him for speaking his mind out. Dino, we both shall kill you nice and easy before pinning it on the Amazons. Hee hee. Here, Ron. Take this. A slave contract. You know what to do. Just as Ron thought, Aaron had come prepared. Then all of this was just pressure tactics. A tactic that worked on him so far because of him caving in. Aaron wanted them to be his illegal slaves. He just let him come to that conclusion on his own. Aaron threw the contract Ron's way and offered him just enough freedom of movement to catch it with his hands via the array's controller. The latter opened the contract scroll and read the terms and conditions carefully. This was an illegal slave contract, one which wasn't approved by the Edinburgh Kingdom. Carrying and enforcing the contract was a punishable offense to both the owner and slaves bound by the illegal contract. Hence illegal contracts tended to be even stricter when it came to information breaches compared to their legal counterparts. And the severity of breaching the contract conditions was instant death. These were the C-rank contracts Aaron had also asked Jack to deliver to him along with the array scrolls. They were costly as well, but compared to the array scrolls, they were basically peanuts. Aaron gave the slave contract to Ron and thought of teasing Dino some more. The array lit up again after Aaron tinkered with its controller. The runes lit up on the ground started producing a buzzing sound. And a few tongues of electricity could be seen getting produced from nowhere. Dino regretted speaking so boldly. Then he looked at his old friend who didn't even pay him heed. Because he was busy reading the contract. Even a meathead like Dino had understood that this was all Aaron's plan all along. But he was also sure that the wretched person was ready to make him disappear from this world should he decide to not cave in. Wait, you mother. I mean Aaron. Just wait. I am ready to sign the slave contract. Dino finally decided to follow Ron's example. Chapter 186, Array Detonation. Aaron made an exaggerated face of surprise before telling the meathead. Whatever happened to your dignity, my friend? I thought you were going to die for your honor and glory? And I was kinda beginning to respect your choice for that, you know. Dino's pale face finally had some color as it got to read from Aaron's remark. He wanted to speak and he raised his hands to do so, but just couldn't find the right words to put his side in the best light. Then Dino just dropped his head down in shame and regret. He had thought that death was easier than serving this wretched man who was all sorts of trouble. But he needed company in his final endeavor. A company he was expecting from Ron. Dino had been following Ron all his life since childhood. And his 2 betrayals in a row did hurt him a bit. But he had already known about this side of his friend. Ron was someone who would do anything and everything for his friends, except for dying. And Dino was still grateful to the guy for him to provide for his family. Plus, Ron had his reasons to survive and achieve the things he wanted to do. And Dino respected him for that. I'm willing to sign the slave contract. Just don't expect me to grovel to your feet now, said Dino and clenched his fists tightly. Aaron wanted to point out that groveling to one's feet wasn't so different from signing the slave contract. But he spared the guy from another verbal abuse and threw another slave contract towards him. Both the berserkers read the contracts carefully with grim expressions. Any breach in the contract was going to result in the implosion of their monocore, including actively or passively seeking help to breach the contract. But they had no choice. The array would have an active timer. And it was ticking. Both of them were sure Aaron wouldn't wait long enough and take care of them along with the 2 beasts if they took up too much time. Ron was the first to sign the slave contract with his blood getting used as ink, imbued in his mana signature. Dino followed in his footsteps soon after. Aaron retrieved the contract scrolls from the dual berserkers and rechecked the contents as well as the imprints of Ron and Dino on their respective contracts. He did the same actions as the dual berserkers to imprint the contract as the owner. But he commanded Reen to sign the contract for him by using her mana and mana signature for imprint. Aaron did this to make sure that Dino and Ron stay loyal to him without him getting directly involved. Plus, a high-ranked entity getting in contract with low-ranked entities would always make it difficult for the latter to breach the contract. Dino and Ron could feel some faint connection with Aaron. But they felt like there was some interference. As if it was Aaron and wasn't him at the same time. But they just chalked it under as their first time being slaves to anybody. Aaron had warned them that the slavery they were willing to undertake had no expiry date. They were going to have to stay as his slave or die to get free from their statuses. But the butcher assured the dual berserkers that most of their daily lifestyles would remain unaffected. And he'd only summon them when he needs them. They could act like usual if and when there was no summon or order from him. And like this, Aaron obtained 2 more slaves. This time, 2 illegal ones. He couldn't make use of the dual berserkers openly. And their slavery statuses needed to be kept hidden for their as well as his sake. But now Aaron could manage the dual berserkers to do a few things without getting his hands dirty. He never wanted to kill the dual berserkers. Just scare them into submission. Of course, Aaron was still not content with the past life experiences he had with dual berserkers. He was going to make them suffer the consequences of that some more. But he had now come to realize that these 2 guys were just looking after their interests. And he was just in their way. So they used him to cater to the benefits they could get by being friendly with Sienna. If the dual berserkers could make use of him for their reasons, Aaron could return the favor to them in the same manner. Plus, killing them would complicate his status with the academy. Even if he takes all the precautions and nothing gets traced back to him, the cynic in Aaron believed that prevention is better than cure. Aaron controlled the arrays with their controllers and allowed Dino and Ron to get out of their traps. Now only the mana beasts were confined to their respective arrays. What are you going to do with them? Ron asked while standing behind Aaron's back, on his right side. They were now at an ample distance away from the spot of the 2 arrays. Dino was standing on Aaron's left. Aaron didn't need to look behind to answer the guy. He just shrugged his shoulders and said nonchalantly. Why, kill them of course. The array can only stay active for so much time. Saying this, Aaron imbued his mana into the 2 controls by grabbing them both in each of his hands and willing them to detonate the arrays using his mana sense. There was no sound. But an unmistakably dominant wave of C-rank mana spread over the surrounding area. 2 lightning element C-rank arrays had been detonated. Chapter 187, Pragmatist Slave Owner. 2 lightning element C-rank arrays were detonated at that time. A sudden wave of blue light washed over the trio's faces. Followed by a tingling sensation on their skin. 2 lightning element C-rank arrays had been detonated after all. It was going to interfere with one's senses even when the array's effect was categorized as non-destructive to its surroundings. There was a sudden surge of C-rank mana in the surrounding area. A surge that made the witness's mana circuit go haywire for a short time. The arrays Aaron had employed were specially made for trapping the mana beasts while preserving their bodies. The lightning storm that must have taken place inside the array was contained by the spectral shield generated by the array themselves. Soon everything calmed down. The spectral shields vanished and the array lines on the ground started going dim. Only then did Aaron and his 2 new hush-hush slaves find the courage to approach ground zero again. Aaron saw two almost intact mana beasts' bodies of the seer rank lying around. He didn't think it to be the case, but just in case the beasts were alive, he sent the dual berserkers to check up on the bodies. The butcher had used his slaves right from the start to make them accustomed to their treatment. His life was more precious than his slaves' lives after all. He only approached the site for real when his slaves confirmed it to be safe. The mana beasts' bodies were still radiating the aura of how dangerous the beasts were when they were alive. Ron, use your ID stone space to keep these bodies. Mine's full. Aaron asked Ron while looking at the bodies that were going to soon turn into a couple of treasure chests for him. But my storage space is full. Well, take everything that you have out in the open then. You too, Dino. I'll see what I can keep so that you guys have enough space to store a mana beast's body each. Ron understood that this was Aaron's way of demanding their resources from them. The guy was just being nice with his words. Contrary to the berserker's belief, Aaron was a pragmatist slave owner. He sighed before nodding at Dino, who by the way, was taking long breaths to control his anger. Aaron saw the resources the dual berserkers had and considered them to be overwhelmingly poor in front of him. But the Scrooge in him decided to pilfer some of their relatively good resources as well. The bodies were soon retrieved by the dual berserkers in their storage spaces. Aaron was going to contact them later on for further procession of the bodies. He was going to hand the bodies to Jack. Aaron was tempted to harvest some body parts of the seer rank beasts to himself so that he can store them in potion bank storage. Then he could take them out when he was confident in processing ingredients on those levels. But Aaron knew that could take years on end. And immediate profits were more important to him than long-term gains at this point. So he decided to give up on salvaging some organs. Plus, an intact mana beast's body, that too of the seer rank, had more value when it was intact than if he decided to dissect it. The way you had planned this thing, Aaron, I'm sure now. You have a specific reason behind your actions. What are you aiming for now? And why do you need us? Ron had retrospected the whole events leading to his slavery and asked his current owner. Probably, Aaron incited them in their ranking war knowing they would react this way. Maybe Aaron was counting on their retaliation all along. That meant Aaron wanted them to have them as his slaves. The slave contracts that he retrieved so readily right after he mentioned them further confirmed his suspicion. Ron didn't like his status. But he was glad that he was alive. And he wanted to remain that way too. But knowing this wretched person, Ron feared that he would use him and Dino for high-risk tasks that wouldn't be short of suicide missions. Ron had come to sense Aaron's nature by now. And he was half sure about his well-educated hunch. You want a purpose for being a slave? Ha ha ha. Don't think too much about why I do things and the way I do them. And don't worry for now. I know what you are thinking. Things won't turn overwhelmingly risky if you follow my orders to AT. Even if I use you in certain situations, I want you to return from them alive. After all, slaves are more useful when they are alive. Dead slaves can only be used as fertilizers. You have your personal lives to take care of. And your growth as rankers is entirely dependent on you. I'll take no part in cultivating or sabotaging them. What I want from you is simple obedience. Do that and I'll assure you we can have a working relationship. Said Aaron and looked at Ron and Dino. He was waiting for them to process what he had said to them just now. Dino wasn't much of a thinker. And he was still salty about being a slave, which was normal for any guy in his shoes. But Ron was unusually cooperative about his new status. Aaron didn't expect this much level-headedness from the berserker. And he considered Ron's intelligence to be a risk for him too. He had a wild thought to kill the pawn he had just created. But Aaron knew he was just being a cynic because his plans were executed the way he wanted them to. Whenever things went his way, Aaron would find them suspicious, thinking that a storm was heading his way. Ron pondered for a while after listening to Aaron's explanations. He couldn't help asking another question to his owner. Sigh. I don't know if anybody has ever told you this, Aaron, but your way of explaining things gives rise to more questions in one's head than answering the intended queries. Anyway, is it about killing someone in LA? Or kidnapping anyone? Let me be clear about a few things. If that's the case, we are not ideal rankers for your operations with the way our power and spells work. We are sure to leave traces behind. And that will eventually get tracked back to you. Ron tried to discourage Aaron from putting them in dangerous situations by giving him a grim possibility. And he considered the worst in his owner and came up with shallow deterrence. Chapter 188, Smart Ass V 2.0. Haha. No need to nudge me in the so-called right direction, Ron. In case you forgot, I'm smarter than you. At least related to these things. You being my slaves now is proof of that. I'll give you a hint to ease your mind. I want your help in dealing with a certain girl. It's not risky. And it should not put you in someone's crosshairs as long as you are careful. Aaron folded his hands after he said that. Something about dealing with a girl caught Dino's attention at last as his ears twitched in response to it. He couldn't help ask his owner about the girl. Who are we talking about? Aaron saw the glint in Dino's eyes and smiled before shaking his head. He understood that the guy wanted to partake in his self-serving fantasies while not feeling any guilt in his consciousness. Don't overimagine stuff, Dino. Thinking isn't your forte anyway. And if I tell you the name of that girl now, forget about doing anything to her. You would be so shit scared, your balls would retract inside you from their sack. Dino and Ron both looked at each other after they heard that. Dino wanted Ron to come up with a possibility with his big brain moves. Ron didn't disappoint his childhood friend. He came up with a possible name after employing the theory of elimination by aspects. Ron said that as soon as he compared the various female rankers Aaron knew in LA. The butcher was right. The berserker's balls struggled to stay in their sack after he heard his hunch being spoken out loud. Aaron, in his own twisted belief, thought that it was poetic justice itself if the same guys who had helped Sienna plot his downfall in the past timeline worked under him to do the same against her at his behest. The butcher couldn't extend the same courtesy to Sienna that he had offered to dual berserkers. Nothing was off limits when it came to punishing her. She was the root cause behind most of his sufferings after all. The others who had helped her only served her as her pawns. So Aaron was willing to learn from his enemies and take the page from their books while he catered to his interests. Aaron was going to make sure that Sienna falls into an even deeper pit than he had found himself in his previous life. But that was difficult for him to pull off alone because of her background. Aaron kept quiet for some time after hearing Ron's spot-on prediction. A few moments had to pass before he replied with stoic expressions and a serious tone. Ron, your intelligence would save you from most dangers, provided you don't act too smart for your good. Said Aaron. He was suddenly reminded of Ralph from the Ozone Woods after witnessing Ron's thought process. He couldn't help asking the guy about the same. Ron, are you, by any chance, related to the guy named Ralph who I heard had been killed, the Ozone Woods butcher? Ron was confused that Aaron suddenly made an out-of-the-blue connection with him and Ralph. But he confirmed his suspicions anyway. Yeah. He is my cousin. Or was. His mother and my mother are sisters. And my uncle Linkar is their only brother. Why do you ask? Now it makes sense. The extra smartness runs in the family. Too bad the same could not be said about their uncle Linkar. Aaron thought to himself before looking at the smart-ass V2.0. Then he just shrugged his shoulders before saying. It was just some news I had heard about your connection with the guy who had died by the butcher's hands. Never mind, I'll tell you about what you need to do in a few days. For now, you can disperse. Said Aaron and turned his back on Ron before starting to walk in a certain direction. He still had another task to worry about now that the mana beasts were out of the picture. Malva hibiscus. He didn't need Berserker's help in locating the ingredient. So he could let them go. But Ron wasn't over with his questions, it seemed. Was that beast contract spell you used back then? Aaron just nodded in response like the pathological liar he was after listening to Ron's query. He would never trust any person just because they were his slaves after all and come clean with all his secrets. But then why haven't you used the spell in your ranking battles till now? Aaron resumed his walk in the direction of Malva hibiscus after he heard that question. His slightly distant was heard by Ron, answering his question by not answering it. And why would I reveal all my cards for everybody to see? And do you think that's the only card I have? He. Aaron seemingly disappeared from his position after he said that. Ron looked at his now gone figure with somber expressions. He had realized that he had messed up and gotten himself involved with a ruthless, cold, and calculative personality. Ron could feel that the societal bottom lines Aaron had only existed because he was looking after his self-interests. He didn't follow them for the sake of others. And if there was the possibility that no repercussions would fall on him, Aaron would be okay with anything and everything. Aaron was not evil because of his actions. He was evil for the simple fact that he knew how to pretend not to be one. With outright evil, the person confronting them had time to prepare in advance. The chaotic evil is always on the path of self-destruction. And the lawful evil can be easy to deal with since it doesn't try to break the established system. It was the neutral evil who could cause the most damage to the society if there ever was a benefit for them in doing so. Ron had come to realize that Aaron's personality made him fall under the last category. At least I'm alive. And as long as I'm alive, Big Brother Ralph, there's a chance for me to get revenge on the butcher for killing you. Don't worry. I'll make sure that the fucker pays somehow. Ron consoled himself with such thoughts. His big brother Ralph was his role model and guiding light. Ron and Ralph were both birthed by their mothers inside a specialized array designed by Lynn's parents to boost the newborn child's stats from the moment they were born. The array seemed to prioritize the intelligence stat more though. Lynn's parents were very well known to create and researching unique arrays like these. And they were very famous and influential because of them. Too bad, their only son couldn't inherit their gifts and sucked balls in the study of arrays. In conclusion, The role that the array played in both Ron and Ralph's births became the foundation for their talents in analyzing things on a deeper level. Both the boys grew up in the same environment. But because of their enhanced intelligence, they weren't social to the peers of their age. Ron and Ralph couldn't connect with others the way they connected because of similar thought processes. That made them look for support in each other. Things only changed for Ron a little when Dino became his friend. But that didn't make him create a distance between him and his big brother Ralph. So when news about Ralph's death came, Ron didn't take it too well. He had to process and release his bottled-up emotions rationally to come up with the idea of taking revenge on the butcher. That line of thought got Ron on his feet again and made him put extra effort into his ranking journey. The berserker had also figured out from the rumors that the butcher wasn't a simple person to deal with. But he took it as a challenge rather than a deterrence. After all, his rational brain needed a clear goal to function, no matter how tall it might seem. Ron thought of taking his time and dealing with the butcher in the future when he became powerful enough to do so. What he couldn't have thought in his wildest dreams was the fact that the butcher who had killed the emotional support of a cousin was the same person he was currently serving as his slave. Chapter 189, Mutagen. Do you sense anything? Aaron asked Reen. They were in the disputed area between the now-killed mana beasts. The dual berserkers had left the region. And Aaron was now treasure hunting with his demon beast to get his hands on Malva hibiscus. I do. There are a few good mana-imbued herbs in the region. But the one with C rank mana is the only one as far as I can tell. That's what you are looking for, Ernie. Reen asked Aaron after detecting the presence of herbs in the vicinity through her stretched mana sense. The latter nodded and told her to guide him there to the herb's place. Reen, the treasure-seeking mean machine, led her master towards the ingredient he needed the most at the time. And the latter couldn't help sporting a smile after he saw the herb inside a narrow cave that had only one opening. Aaron didn't approach the C rank herb right away. Because some herbs had a defense mechanism in place. Rankers needed a few special techniques to harvest them. But Aaron knew the ingredient wasn't of the harmful kind. Well, not really. But the ingredient was known to release an irritant gas in response to the perceived threats. The butcher had studied the ingredient at the Academy's library, knowing about all the information there was to know about the same. The irritant gas had the harshest ill effect on the F rankers. But it wouldn't work on the C rankers. Therefore Aaron told Reen to harvest the ingredient by giving her proper directions while he stayed at the back observing the process. But that was not all Aaron had told Reen to do. He had come prepared after knowing about the irritant gas release of the ingredient and decided to harvest that as well. Therefore, he handed a Poti 1 F rank item to Reen that he had purchased from Jack. It was a simple container in the form of a run-inscribed vial. The user needed to run their non-elementalized mana through the item and it would suck in the surrounding air, safely securing it within itself. Reen did as she was guided by her master. She had picked up a few of Aaron's skills in Poti 1 as well. So she wasn't a complete amateur when it came to handling Poti 1 ingredients. Like this, Aaron secured two crucial items from his meticulous planning apart from the two treasure chests that were the mana beast bodies. Now the path to becoming Levin's disciple was open to him. Aaron was seen laying on his bed the next day. He was reading a tattered book that didn't look like it was taken from the Academy's library. This was one of the study materials he had seized from the cultist hideout. It seemed like the book contained a general summary on the study of theranthropy and demi-humans, written by someone in the first-person narration. Aaron read out aloud. Mutagen. This is the elusive genetic element humans need for their successful transformation into that of demi-humans and break their shackles of staying as ordinary rankers. Mutagen can be considered as the most basic form of a genetic makeup that is based on the stable fusion of human and beastly genes. Ideally, a stable mutagen would be passed down through generations until it regresses into that of a human or beast gene later down the line. But the study in the field of mutagen is extremely lacking at the time I'm writing this note for myself. Or to be more precise, the core studies that have been done till now are all either destroyed or kept hidden by the kingdoms. Most of the continent's history of the past 700 years has many loopholes. And some descriptions of now ruined areas and events are heavily redacted. If my guess is correct, then the entire continent faced something horrible of an unprecedented level in the past due to the rankers' pursuit of becoming demi-humans. That's why all the kingdoms and empires came to a unanimous decision to get rid of anything that was linked with the study of mutagens and demi-humans. But this is where the establishments are going wrong. Oppressing the information would only birth the curiosity in rankers' heads and make it grow at an incredible rate. I'm no exception to this rule either. The study of mutagens and the lost path of becoming a demi-human is fascinating to me. And one day that lost path shall not stay as lost to us anymore. The previous studies on this path have been kept away from the reach of normal rankers by the establishments. So we will just start things from scratch and arrive at the answer with our efforts. It's not like we didn't try. We experimented with the shapeshifter demon beasts and made them mate with human partners. But no matter what we did, no pregnancy occurred from those experiments. We have concluded that human and beast genes are incompatible with normal methods of child conception. They repel each other. We had subjects mate daily for months on end. Yet there were no results. The path of therianthropy focuses on pseudo-mutagen that is obtained by using only the fusion of human and beast blood at a superficial level. And with all due respect to the rankers who have researched on and taken the path of therianthropy, it is nothing but a cheap imitation of the original. Therianthropy has many limitations. And it is something that makes you start from scratch with every ranker. That is because the pseudo-mutagen doesn't get passed down through generations. After all, therianthropy doesn't harmonize the human and beastly genes. The two distinct gene makeups of humans and beasts just get glued together through the use of a permanent spell instead of getting mixed. The lack of harmony between the human and beastly genes is the reason behind why therianthropy falls short in paving the way for rankers to become demi-humans. It is a half-assed answer to something that is immensely phenomenal. But I'm not heartbroken. Because I found something of immense value while exploring a nameless ranker's utopia. It was the skeleton of a human ranker with a bone density that was many times greater than the ordinary rankers. We have run some tests now. And we are sure that it is the skeleton of an actual demi-human. Although we can't do much after that due to the ruined state of the skeleton, we are now sure that demi-humans exist. Or can exist. Because they had existed back then when history was yet to be made and redacted. As long as we know that our hard work can get us the fruit we need, we are ready to bear the hard work. If the establishments want us to stop pursuing the lost path, let them try. J. Edgar. Chapter 190, Demi-Human. If the establishments want us to stop from pursuing the lost path, let them try. J. Edgar. Aaron read till this entry and then closed the book to process what he had understood from it. Now he was sure that he was completely ignorant in his previous timeline. Because he didn't know about the continent-shaking events J. Edgar Person talked about in his journal. Neither was he aware of therianthropy and mutagen. And he was certainly not aware that demi-humans existed for real once. He wanted to take whatever that was written in this journal with a pinch of salt, but the various explanations the journal gave to defend the writer's conjectures made sense to him. Wait a minute. Fuyuk. Am I a demi-human now? Aaron had a sudden thought after reading Edgar's journal and couldn't help opening his eyes wide in surprise. He felt joy at first in succeeding in something that many high-ranked entities had failed in. But that joy was soon replaced with worry and concern for his well-being after he registered the possible repercussions. As per the journal's explanations, all the big league establishments spanning across the continent seemed to abhor demi-humans. Aaron already had an active bounty placed on him as the Ozenwood's butcher. He didn't need to be a genius to know how the Edinburgh Kingdom would react if it came to find out that Aaron had succeeded in becoming a demi-human. The most strange part about this whole scene was the fact that Aaron wasn't aiming for anything even remotely related to becoming a demi-human. Breathe, Aaron, breathe. Take deep breaths and calm the fuck down. This is all just a conjecture. I need to look through the study materials carefully before making a well-educated guess. For all I know, I might just be something else entirely. Something in between an anthrope and a demi-human. Or maybe I'm still a human with abilities that are like the anthropes. I don't understand what took place that day. I never thought about the transformation I had after that uncalled-for fusion with Reen. But it looks like I need to look into it for real. Thought Aaron to console himself. He denied being a demi-human, in the end, to assure himself that there wouldn't be another fresh manhunt launched on him. Because if that manhunt takes place, it involved all the big players from the kingdom and possibilities outside it. He'd have to leave the academy, say goodbye to his future endeavors, and live under a rock all his life to keep his hide. But then Aaron had a melancholic thought that maybe he had used 2 lifetimes' luck on that gem. With the way things seemed to go haywire for him despite his meticulous planning, he couldn't be sure that the same wouldn't happen in this case as well. Aaron smiled mirthlessly after he came to realize something. Things started to spiral out of control when Aaron obtained Reen as his demon beast. It pointed to another possibility that he voiced to himself. Maybe Reen was the key someone big in the Edinburgh Kingdom had made for themselves to turn into a demi-human behind everyone's backs. If that is the case, then it would explain why they are looking high and low for my traces. Reen was an investment they never wanted to come out in the public. It'd be a huge conspiracy if some big shot fella in the royal court is found to be dabbling in taboo experiments that were deemed forbidden by all the known establishments on this continent. Another conjecture bomb went off in Aaron's head. He wasn't sure on his hunch, but all the events and the information he had collected so far pointed to the same possibility. J. Edgar's journal had opened his eyes to various things that were hiding in plain sight for him. But all his conjectures need to stay as conjectures. That's because he didn't have much information on a lot of things that were linked to these possibilities. Therefore, Aaron added another task to his to-do list, to know about the missing pieces of history of the entire continent that was dated back to 700 years or before. If what Edgar's journal had written was considered to be true, then he knew that he wouldn't find much in the Academy's library. But he wanted to try nonetheless. Of course, Aaron knew that he needed to act with even more prudence now. If he is a demi-human or the closest sample to being one, then death won't be the worst thing his fate would have in store for him. He'd be kept like a guinea pig in some lab all his life with no way to escape or commit suicide at sight. Sigh. As if being the Ozenwood's butcher was not enough. Now I need to worry about even this shit. I swear to the devil, if I find that buffoon who chose a low-level place like Ozenwood's to perform their cultist-like experiments, I'll fry their balls in boiling oil and make that person eat them with ketchup on top. Fuck. That is if they have balls and I have the power to pull this off. Aaron was having a range of emotions in his head at the time. The demon beast connected mentally with him couldn't help asking with a downcast voice after she saw what her master was going through. Ernie, do you regret involving yourself with me? Aaron had already gotten up from his bed by now. He was pacing around in his room, with hands behind his back while the storm of thoughts raged in his head. Reen was sitting by his bed in a young girl's form when she asked that. Where did that come from? Said Aaron with puzzling expressions and paused his stride in loop. Reen had to clarify what she said. All your big problems and your pressing worries are related to me. Isn't that a big enough reason for me to ask you that question? Said Reen with serious expressions on her face. But one could see a hint of worry and guilt hidden behind that seriousness. Chapter 191, Bonus Chapter Distinction Between Rankers and Cultists. Chapter 191, Bonus Chapter Distinction Between Rankers and Cultists. Yeah. I have to admit. You are the reason behind my problems, Reen. Aaron said this while nodding nonchalantly. Due to which Reen had a blank face. She thought her master would try to talk some sense to her, saying how wrong she was in thinking the way she was thinking. The butcher was unpredictable to even his demon beast, it seemed. But then Reen sensed Aaron's emotions and got angry. Now I get it. You were just teasing me. Be glad I don't like to bully my master. Otherwise, you'd be in a lot of trouble. Aaron smiled mirthlessly after he heard his demon beast throwing tantrums at him. She was becoming more like a teenage girl than a feared demon beast. My point is even if I knew these troubles beforehand, I'd still choose to make you mine. That's because you are that important and precious to me. Aaron tried to cajole Reen into submission. And it would have worked on almost any teen girl. But alas, Reen could read his thoughts well. Important to you or your crafty plans? Reen said this and narrowed her eyes as if she was paying close attention to her master's moves and his statements. Aaron scratched his head before continuing. Why do they need to be mutually exclusive in the first place? You are important to me and my plans both. Besides, you were the reason behind a buffoon like DOM getting successful in the previous timeline. Surely, we can do something about my rotten luck in future as well. Hee. This answer finally satisfied Reen. It highlighted the importance of her existence in her master's life. Aaron didn't deny that he had become her master for his interests. But he also added that she was an integral part of his existence now. Reen thought that Aaron was investing his time and resources into too many things at once when he could have just focused on his ranking journey. All his planning and cunningness were not worth it in her eyes. That's why she couldn't help ask him. Aaron, I feel you are better suited as a cultist than a normal ranker. Why do you need to put this much effort into everything you do when you can join the other side and enjoy more freedom? Aaron raised his eyebrows again after listening to Reen's question that came out of the blue. He scratched his chin along with his barely growing beard before replying. Hee. While I admire your efforts in looking after me, Reen, you are still too much of a greenhorn. You see rankers and cultists as two groups. But they are two sides of the same coin. There's not really a difference between a ranker and a cultist when you think about it. One does all that they wish while the other does things in the dark. Said Aaron and stored Edgar's journal back in his storage space. Then he picked up the purple apple kept on the fruit stand and started eating it. He threw the other one to Reen, who caught it with a trace of confusion still visible on her face. So why do humans see each other as cultists and rankers at all? Why can't they all just be rankers pursuing their own paths to power? Asked Reen while following her master's lead and eating the purple fruit she was handed to. Aaron looked at the girl savoring the fruit and shook his head before continuing. There are some cosmetic differences between the two. And cosmetics matter. The biggest advantage cultists have over rankers is the way they share their knowledge about their ranking journey. It seems the big hots among them have invested their time and resources into finding old and new paths to power that can be deemed revolutionary when compared to what the rankers have today. Aaron said while finishing his fruit. Now he had retrieved another book from his storage. This was a pioneering book about ingredients. He was reading on the irritant gas released by Malva hibiscus and its uses. But then why are you hesitating to become a cultist? Your status as a potential demi-human is sensitive no matter which side you join or abandon. But with cultists, at least you'd have more ways to learn about the lost path of becoming a demi-human. Here, as a ranker, you won't gain much regarding how to tap into your true potential. If you can't come out in the open regarding your potential demi-human status. But the cultists' advantages end there. The establishments spread across this continent are way too powerful. They won't allow the cultists to prosper because they are anti-establishment. The cultists exist because the establishments want them to exist. The kingdoms and empires use the cultists as their powers in the shadows to create unrest in their enemies' territory. In short, the cultists exist to serve as an excuse for the establishments to do their dirty work while shedding responsibility for their actions. No matter what they do inside and outside their territory, they always have one force to blame for their mischiefs, the cultists. Sure, I'd like my freedom. Which sane ranker who wants to progress faster and further in their ranking journey would ever say no to such an offer? But I don't want to sacrifice my safety because of it. Being a ranker has its disadvantages, I can't pretend that they don't exist. And rankers' societal rules are bothersome. What's even more bothersome is the way they are less restricted the higher you climb in the ranking ladder. But even with all restrictions, staying as a ranker would give you a stable way to progress without being worried about the repercussions from the powers that are above you. Slow and steady progress in the beginning ranks is essential for a ranker. And it's not that I won't ever swim in those murky waters. But right now, I'm better off as just another ranker, said Aaron and closed the book he was reading. Reen was satisfied with her master's explanations as she looked at him pondering over something. Aaron then retrieved the runic container in which Malva hibiscus was stored. He checked the ingredient one more time to ensure everything is the way it should be. Aaron stored the container after the final recheck and raised his hands towards Reen. The latter just converted into her slime form and merged with the tip of his index finger before disappearing into his body. It was time Aaron met up with Adept Levine. Chapter 192, Master Ranker. Morning, Adept Levine. Aaron greeted the potion master with a courtesy bow. He had come to the small library attached to the potioning lab, where Levine was busy reading through some books. The latter looked at him and raised her brows before replying. I don't think we have a lecture set for today, Aaron. Is something the matter? Aaron flashed a broad grin at the adept rankers before replying. I got it. The thing that you were looking for. It took a while for Levine to realize what Aaron was talking about. The look of urgency was seen on her face as she could only utter a few words to describe it. Show me. Aaron didn't play the tease and retrieved the runic container from his storage space. Levine practically snatched it from his hands as soon as she saw it appear in front of her. Levine freed the C-rank ingredient from its confines and observed it closely. An inspectional glance soon replaced urgency, paving the way for unmasked ecstasy. Brilliant, Aaron. This Malva hibiscus is top-notch. Just the way I wanted it. You have even harvested it the right way. I'm utterly satisfied. I know you want my discipleship to use my name and contact, Aaron. But for this favor you've done for me, I don't see that as a problem. Here, take this. Bound it with your blood and mana. Levine handed a token to Aaron, which had an image of a cauldron on one side and the name Montmorency on the other. There were also intricate runic inscriptions that seemed to glow with a faint light as soon as Aaron touched them. This was a ranked item. Aaron just didn't know which one. But he didn't dally and did what Levine told him to do. Soon the item was bound by the butcher, who then looked at the dear ranker for an explanation. That's your discipleship badge, Aaron. It will prove useful to you in the future. From today onwards, you are my disciple and I'm your teacher. I'd give you more details regarding our arrangement. But not now. Give me a few days to sort out some affairs that need my immediate attention. I'll contact you when the time's right. Levine was clearly in a rush and wanted to deal with her problem immediately. Instead, she wanted to talk to the person who had become the delivery man for what she desired the most. Aaron had realized this, but he couldn't help but add a comment of his own. Thank you, Teacher Levine. I'm glad to be under the tutelage of such a talented pioneer. But I'd like to remind you, at the risk of sounding ignorant about your expertise. Malva hibiscus is a mild ingredient in nature. But its effects would change drastically if it's distilled with monocore healing potions that also tend to be mild. If you... Aaron wanted to continue warning Levine about something, but the latter just chuckled before interrupting him. Hee. Aaron, you mean to say I won't be able to handle the effects of my creation because I made some rookie mistake? Aaron shook his head before replying. No, I am not saying that. But I'm saying that instead of adding another agent in your potion to act as the neutralizer, why not use the side product of the same ingredient that it is compatible with? You have stored the irritant gas of the ingredient as well while harvesting. Instead of confirming Levin's questions, Aaron removed a portion of the irritant gas that was released by the C-rank ingredient as a defense mechanism. He had another container of the irritant gas with him that he kept in his storage space. I think this much should be enough. Aaron handed the vial to Levine, whose face was etched with surprise. The kid in front of her didn't understand the value of this irritant gas, but she did. With this, Levine now had both the ingredient and a stabilizing agent to concoct the potion she needed for so long now. She felt happy, yes. But her happiness was overshadowed by Aaron's in-depth preparation to harvest the ingredients the right way even when he knew nothing about their effects. The boy came prepared, I must say, thought Levine before smiling wholeheartedly. With the irritant gas added to the distilling process, the potion's quality she was preparing to brew would be exceptional even by her standards. Aaron, do you know about my monocore damage? Levine couldn't help asking when she heard the guy talk about healing potions that treated damaged monocore. Malva hibiscus could have been a dead giveaway if it wasn't used in various potion recipes. So Aaron coming with that spot-on conclusion was still somewhat surprising for Levine, who was waiting for her new disciple to answer her question. Oh, I just guessed after talking with my Aunt Nina about Malva hibiscus. You have regressed in your ranking journey, right? Although a C rank ingredient is ideally not suited for your requirement, I'm sure potioners at your level will have countless ways to deal with such an issue. Aaron used Nina's name again to skip any explanation about how he knew about things, which he knew because of the past timeline. Levine had regained her ranking status as a C rank expert ranker in the past timeline. All thanks to her past future disciple finding her the Malva hibiscus. So he thought Levine had regressed to D rank from C rank. But he underestimated the effects of compatible stabilizing agents the potions at higher rank needed to up their quality. The same stabilizing agent he had provided to Levine. Oh. So it was your healer guardian that might have come up with that conjecture. He. You are right about my regression, all right. But let's just say that you underestimate me not only as a Poti oner but also as a ranker. Aaron was confused about what Levine was talking about. So he was about to ask for an explanation, but it seemed that he didn't have to. That's because Levine provided it for him with her next statement. Had it been only Malva hibiscus, I would have only regained my status as a C ranker. But with the compatible stabilizing agent in my hands, I might just be able to create a master rank potion. You know what that means, right? Chapter 193, Acquaintances. Levine looked at her disciple with an amusing expression after she asked the rhetoric question. The latter took some time to digest the words he had heard just now from his teacher. He only expressed his disbelief after some time. Master rank potion. B rank. Teacher Levine, you were a B ranker before regression. Now it was Aaron's turn to feel utter surprise. Contrary to his limited knowledge from the past timeline, Levine was a B ranker. She was a master Poti oner who had regressed 2 ranks straight away. Aaron didn't even want to know about how she was forced to regress so much. He feared asking her about it would give her the impression that he was interested in knowing about her woes. Aaron wanted to stay away from such controversial things as far away as he could, lest they come to bite him in the ass. He already had a terrible experience with being the Ozenwood's butcher and potential demi-human. There was no need to add another entry to that list. He. You look shocked, all right. Yes, I was a B ranker before my regression. And it is only a possibility that I'd regain my rank back with the help of both the ingredient and stabilizing agent distilled into a master potion. As an adept, however, it will not be easy to create a master rank potion. I will need some help. Anyway. I'll be a bit busy for some days, Aaron. My cure doesn't lie in me finding the right ingredients. I also need the right resources to get out of my regression for the better. I'll post a notice on your spectral screen soon and halt all my scheduled lectures for a few days. They'll only get resumed when I am done doing something about my regression. I'll take my leave now, said Levine, and got up to find her Poti onering lab located at a distance from where she was. She knew it might even take weeks on end to get out of the ditch a master Poti oner like her had found herself in. Aaron also took his leave after he heard that. He regretted only one thing in this deal. Damn it. I should have asked for something more. This was a huge opportunity for me to get something from a B ranker. But fuck. Aaron regretted missing out on a potential fortune he didn't see coming and therefore missed. The Scrooge thought that Levine could have been milked for more than just her discipleship had he known about the importance of the stabilizing agent he had provided. Some days after Aaron's visit to Levine. Interclass ranking war. 1C White Raven crew vs 1A Stormborns. White Raven crew this time had a 5-member squad that consisted of Aaron, Renita, Steve, Becky, and Jake. The Butcher was supposed to lead the charge in this match as well, with Steve supporting him in his frontal assault. Renita was supposed to provide cover fire to their charge while Becky and Jake were meant to be the cushions they could fall back on. But Aaron's expressions changed from carelessness to seriousness as soon as he heard the name of their opponent's squad. That's because he had met up with the 3 members of that team while he was traveling towards the academy. Jason Storm, Ivor Ozen, and Veronica Garcia. They were the same people Aaron had met in the city of Laurel outside the grocery shop. Aaron wasn't worried about Ivor, Veronica, or the other 2 members of the team. But Jason was different. And this wasn't about winning or losing the match. Unfortunately for Aaron this time, one couldn't forfeit the compulsory ranking wars without participating first. He had to play this match and be done with it. Just one match. I'll leave Jason to others and deal with the rest. Aaron changed his battle tactics slightly. He let his teammates know about it. The other members of White Raven crew had no reason to argue with Aaron, so they all agreed. Aaron Idril. Glad we met again. How have you been? I'm guessing pretty well after looking at your war ranking. Jason flashed a mild smile when the teams met up just before the match. He was trying to get Aaron into his friend circle. But the guy was more slippery than an eel. Every time he tried meeting him, the guy would just disappear from his last known place as if he knew who was coming to see him. But this interclass ranking war gave Jason a chance to finally have a word with this interesting fellow. And he was looking forward to having a long discussion with him after the match gets over as well. Jason and Ivor had gotten even more famous than Aaron as first-year rankers. They were always within the top ranks. Like Aaron, they also had progressed much further than their ordinary peers in terms of their ranking journey. Veronica was also quite impressive in her league. It was just that compared to the rising stars in her team, she appeared to have a dimmer halo. Jason Storm. Right back at you. Your and Ivor's names are all the rage these days among us first years. In the name of our acquaintance from before, I would appreciate it if you could just make it easy on me and my team. Hee. Ivor was standing right behind Jason. He liked Aaron's flattering attitude and didn't find anything wrong with it. Ozan Jr. was used to being treated as someone in charge all the time anyway. So when someone followed that practice in the academy when they didn't need to, Ivor would feel his ego getting soothed subconsciously. But there was that girl with an irksome attitude who seemed to always have something against the butcher. She couldn't help pitching in before any other members of her team had a chance to reply. Just get your sorry asses beaten up nicely and quickly. Then you won't have to suffer much. Veronica replied with an uncaring attitude that said she was getting impatient to prove her words right. And she also added another expression, in the end, to show her distaste in everything that was happening around her. Chapter 194, White Raven Crew vs Stormborns. It was impossible to miss Veronica's voiced attitude. With a mirthless smile on his face, Jason told Aaron and his team to ignore his arrogant teammate. But Aaron couldn't help narrowing down his eyes on Veronica. What is up with this bitch? Aaron thought to himself as he shook hands with Jason before both teams separated. The match was about to start. The battle between White Raven Crew and Stormborns commences in 3, 2, 1. Now. Announced the referee to the teams and the audience watching the match. A lot of students were fanboys of Ivor and Jason. They wanted to see their stars beat down their opponents while keeping their cool. Because that's what has happened in their matches so far. When compared to Aaron, who had experimented in his ranking matches and struggled to win every time, Jason and Ivor dominated their opponents. Ivor was even more brutal with his opponents than anyone in the first years. He was a close combat expert like Aaron. So he would get up and close to his opponents and beat them up black and blue with his uncaring attacks. Ivor's opponents would often spill blood one way or the other because of Ivor's quick dagger work. And that was considered fan service for Ivor's fans. Just like Aaron, Jason's team had also focused on their attack potential. Jason was a battle mage, a specialized branch of the mage path that focused on mid-range attacks instead of the usual AoEs and long-range attacks the path was known for. Jason had an affinity for wind. It made his battle style quick and fast-paced. A second benefit of having the great element as your affinity is that your ranking journey is unhindered. Therefore, his BTP value was greater than Aaron's. Ivor was a close combat expert. But his similarity with Aaron didn't end only there. He also had a lightning element as his elemental affinity. Additionally, his dagger arts made his attacking style quite similar to that of the butcher. His grandfather Ozan provided Ivor with plenty of ranking resources and extols. Plus, the guy was talented as well as diligently working. And he had a relentless drive to be the best in his generation. Jason was already a heavy hitter in the Stormborns. Ivor, with his BTP value of 21, was akin to a loose cannon that was as deadly as it was precise. Veronica's affinity for lava made her a unique first-year mage. It served her battle style that the two of the most op members in her team were always moving. That gave her the space to cast her AoE spells without catching her opponents in them as well. Veronica had a BTP value of 17. She was about to enter the middle stage of F rank. Her monocore was almost going to enter the liquid stage. She just needed a small push. The two extra members Jason had kept in his team were just there to fill the numbers. They were talented as well. But compared to the rising stars and one talented bitch with attitude, they were akin to cannon fodders. Aaron zeroed his eyes on the cannon fodders. As soon as he heard the referee making the announcement that the battle had started, he seemingly disappeared from his position. Aaron appeared right in the middle of the battlefield. He had traveled a sizable distance between the two teams in a fraction of moments, making it difficult for Steve and Renita to follow him in his assault. But they weren't worried about Aaron. They had started to believe in him. He wouldn't take unnecessary risks for short gains. And he would be the first to retreat in case he saw an unstoppable danger heading his way. Renita fired off her rounds of mana bullets in the direction of Jason. That's what she had been instructed to do by Aaron. His instructions were to hinder Jason as much as she could while maintaining a safe distance from him. She had wind elemental affinity too. Plus her class made her more nimble than the bat limit she was targeting currently. Jason grunted audibly before he started dodging the wind bullets seemingly homing on him. Jason was as fast as Aaron when the latter only used his movement technique. When the bat limit gave it his all, he was faster than the butcher. So when Renita started firing, not a single bullet was able to touch him. But that didn't prevent Renita from targeting the bat limit. She stopped advancing after spanning a few meters with Steve. The ranger then nodded at the latter, suggesting the berserker to aid in Aaron's opening salvo. Jason was pinned by Renita and was taken out of the picture for a while. Aaron could sense Steve following from behind. He looked at his berserkers and pointed at Veronica. He wanted Steve to take care of them or at least hold off the mage. Ivor had the same idea as Aaron. He had moved ahead to deal with Aaron's remaining team members Jake and Becky while they were in their metaphorical stronghold. Team Stormborn's cannon fodder saw an enemy close combat expert heading their way and couldn't help looking at each other with helpless smiles. This event was not new for them anymore. They have witnessed and gone through situations like these many times now. That's because Team Stormborn's opponents would always target these poor fellows and their op team members wouldn't care much about them. Therefore, the cannon fodders didn't lose their confidence. They prepared themselves for what they had always been preparing for, the worst. Unfortunately for them, that still wasn't enough. As soon as he was within the range of his targets, Aaron activated his sedated perception and vanished into thin air. The cannon fodders had their backs against each other. But they had kept some distance from each other for the freedom of movement. This was the space Aaron chose to seemingly morph into existence right in the middle of his two targets. Chapter 195, Berserker with Brains. The space Aaron chose to morph into existence was right in the middle of his two targets. He executed the blitz bolt through both hands without wasting any time. Before the crowd could even see the cannon fodders' epic struggle to stop being cannon fodders, they faced a vicious blow behind their necks. Aaron's simple attack literally and metaphorically made the hair on their backs turn straight. With his simple attack, the butcher made quick work of his two opponents. The side characters were taken care of. Aaron narrowed his gaze on Veronica next. It was about time he returned the compliments thrown his way by the mage with compound interest. Veronica was battling with Steve, who seemed annoying to her. That's because the guy also had an earth element affinity, which gave him a fighting chance against her. Veronica had turned the sizable area around her into a pond of lava with the help of her AoE spell. She was standing in the middle, creating whips of lava that shot forth from the pond from time to time. Steve was targeted by these whips whenever he approached close to her to take care of her. If this was a normal berserker, she would have taken care of them by now. That's because her lava pond made it difficult for the berserkers to close in on her even with their signature berserker charge. Plus, the lava whips provided her with a very effective offense and defense mechanism packed into one move. So whenever an opponent would approach her, she would just wait for them to get near her before trapping them into her lava pond. Veronica's lava would eat away the invisible yet protective mana layer the rankers had coated over their bodies, making them prone to serious burns. And she had enough control on her AoE spell to increase the temperature of the lava even more if and when she needed to. Veronica's lava, like her, was always boiling and seething. So usually her opponents would give up and forfeit their involvement in the match when their mana layers would get burned away by her lava attacks. And yet, Steve proved to her that she wasn't the only one that was in total control of her spells. All these weeks fighting with Aaron and learning from him the true path of a berserker had opened the guy's eyes to a new reality. Steve now understood the attitude required to be a berserker in a true sense. Berserking isn't all about amplified power that is powered by berserking potions. Emotions also served as another type of fuel in a berserker's path. Aggression that caused rankers to shut off their brains wasn't always ideal. Total control over their movement and battle style didn't tap into the berserker's true potential either. But a controlled aggressiveness that made use of those emotions while keeping the ranker's rationality in check granted the berserkers to truly make full use of their path. Steve had emptied a berserking potion in his mouth by now. As per Aaron's instructions, he wasn't allowed to underestimate his opponent. And he could clearly understand that Veronica wasn't someone who he could tackle easily in the first place. So he had to be fast and efficient with his battle style. He executed his earth element spells and made his hands and legs get wrapped in earthen armor. As the armor was mana infused, it was lightweight while allowing easy movement. The armor was what kept Steve safe from Veronica's attacks. Of course, he was struggling to keep his armor on for some time without it getting hardened. This was because he came into contact with the lava. But Steve had no problem with his armor getting crumpled down in the first place. He would cast the spell again and make a supplementary layer of armor appear on his limbs. Then Steve would charge at Veronica once again, making her almost unable to concentrate on any other detail happening around her battlefield. Plus, the berserker would always choose creative ways to get close to the lava mage. He would sometimes go for a direct charge. And sometimes his direct charge would turn out to be a decoy to cast another earth element spell in the lava mage's direction. Aaron had guided Steve in choosing the right kind of earth element spell that would bode well with each other. And he had also polished his berserker's battle style closer to perfection than ever before. Earth Spikes. This was another spell Steve now had in his arsenal. Of course, he needed to get close to his opponents for it to work. But with his mana sense spreading forth in the surrounding, he would be able to cast the spell in any direction he saw fit. Plus, Steve could now stack his Earth Spikes spells. He was able to cast up to 3 Earth Spikes spells simultaneously by now. He was able to accomplish all this because Earth elements were readily available no matter what his environment was. And the fact that the Earth element was one of the great elements that focused on simplicity allowed Steve to stack 3 spells with only a few weeks' dedicated work under Aaron's guidance. The Earth Spike spell had turned out to be a nuisance for Veronica. She was still relatively safe standing in the middle of her self-created lava pond. But the spikes would breach the defenses set by her mana and would always make contact with her. That's why she was forced to change her direction and line of attack from time to time. Steve kept her busy. But it didn't look like he would be able to tackle her successfully by getting close to her. Neither did Veronica look like she would be able to break the stalemate anytime soon. The berserker and the lava mage both had their hands full with each other. So they couldn't pay attention to Aaron, who was getting close to their battlefield at a rapid pace. Aaron saw it was almost impossible for him to sneak on Veronica because of her AoE. So he decided to use his berserker as a decoy. Steve. Now! Shouted Aaron and executed his movement spell. Chapter 196, Bonus Chapter Going into a Shell. Steve heard Aaron's call from behind him and flashed a wicked smile towards his opponent without looking back. He retrieved another vial of berserking potions and used his berserking charge that aimed straight for Veronica. Veronica heard Aaron's shout too. She was taken aback by Aaron's speed to take care of the cannon fodder she had in her team. It wasn't that she was expecting them to neutralize Aaron completely. But she had thought that they would be able to at least hold the close combat expert off for a reasonable amount of time. She had thought wrong. Or maybe she underestimated her opponent thoroughly. Either way, she was under immediate pressure from 2 fronts. Veronica saw the enemy berserker drink probably his last vial of berserking potion and knew that things were about to get serious. She had also realized that the first threat would come from Steve. Even if he fails, the incoming enemy can use the time to close in on her and force her to join a close combat battle. That would be a game over for her. Therefore, she needed to take care of the charging berserker first. She raised both of her hands in front of Steve and waved them as if guiding the lava whips born from the lava pond. Steve saw a barrage of incoming lava whips closing in on him. He couldn't help smiling after looking at the reddish-orange whips heading his way at breakneck speeds. Aaron was right. Even a tough game becomes fun to play against stronger opponents if you know how you can play your strengths. Steve thought and cast his other spell. Earth Spike. Veronica was ready as soon as she sensed the mana fluctuations in her surroundings. She started looking around her with the corner of her eyes, anticipating an incoming attack from Steve. Veronica's alert reactions made the berserker more fearsome as he charged toward her. While under the effect of the berserking potion, he remembered Aaron's words about voicing his attacks with zeal to get the most out of them. So he followed his leader's advice. Earth Spike, said Steve out loud. Veronica heard the guys shout and balled her fists in anticipation, seemingly preparing for a dodge and counter strategy. But alas, White Raven Crew's berserker had picked up a thing or two from their shadow leader. Steve had been told by Aaron that berserkers in battle shouts would sometimes fool the enemy into thinking the attack was coming, regardless of whether it was true or not. Even if the opponents knew that there's a chance the berserker was just bluffing, their subconscious mind would always think about the countermeasure to the enemy attack they had just shouted the name of. Steve employed Aaron's trick and decided to use it against over-alert Veronica, making for a convincing bluff. The Earth Spike he had executed was not for her. It was for him. That's right. Steve fired his Earth Spike right in the middle of his path toward Veronica. His feet were thrust into the air when he stepped on the ground outside the latter's lava pond due to the spike forming immediately beneath them. The size, speed of formation, and the direction of the spike had all been adjusted to suit Steve's berserking charge. Like this, an Earth Element berserker seemed to have found an invisible pair of wings to complete his charge in the air. Without worrying about what was happening on the ground below him. The lava whips missed their mark. In response, they attacked the spike that sent Steve in the air, and it soon crumpled. But Steve had no use for it anyway. He appreciated Veronica's panic after she saw him seemingly flying towards her. Veronica retracted the lava whips she had sent towards the spike and was getting ready to tackle the flying berserker who had his limbs coated in the earthen armor again. Veronica stopped caring about the opponent's life and launched an all-out offensive against Steve with numerous lava whips targeting him from all directions. The mage was confident her attack this time would produce results as Steve had no maneuverability while in the air. She thought wrong. Because Steve expected earth spikes again and created a new, bigger spike in his path just before the whips hit him. This time he didn't step on the tip but caught the spike with his hands. He maneuvered his body such that it would change position and launched himself in the opposite direction he was heading in just now. Steve retreated using a last-minute maneuver. Veronica couldn't help cursing after she saw the berserker keeping his emotions in check and displaying exceptional control and skill to get the most out of his simple spells. Fuck you, Steve, or something. Fight me as you mean it, I dare you. Veronica gave Steve a naked threat. But he was all smiles after looking at his opponent seething in rage like boiling lava. She was so preoccupied with obsessing over Steve's retreat that she had forgotten his charge was only a decoy to buy time. The real attack on Stormborn's lava mage came from White Raven Crew's close combat expert. When Steve retreated safely from the whips, Aaron had launched his spell combo and accelerated towards the lava mage. Aaron used the spell combo of sedated perception, stunning speed, and blitz steps. He felt like his entire body was as light as a feather as he approached the lava mage in the seemingly stagnated world. The spell combo made him too fast to be recognized by an F-ranker's mana sense, much less the visual perception done by the eyes. So when Steve retreated to a safe zone from Veronica's attack, she almost didn't anticipate Aaron coming her way. Almost. Veronica didn't anticipate Aaron getting close to her in such a short time right after Steve's retreat. Even so, she had anticipated that sooner or later one of her opponents would make her fight close range. Therefore, as soon as she saw Steve flash a smile towards her, Veronica knew something was up. She didn't waste any time and raised her hands in urgency. Lava Shell. Chapter 197, Staunch Believer of Gender Equality P1. The lava pond around Veronica immediately started concentrating with her at the center. Then it took the shape of a sphere with the lava mage standing inside it. The red-hot lava unexpectedly cooled down rapidly due to the ranker's mana interfering in the natural process. Soon the almost complete sphere turned charcoal black in shade with bright crimson lines running on its surface like some intricate pattern. This was Veronica's defensive spell, Lava Shell. Lava Shell required that the caster first cast Lava Pond so that the lava can be molded into a sphere-shaped shell around the caster. That requirement made it impossible for the caster to use the Lava Shell without casting Lava Pond first. But Veronica didn't mind that the defensive spell had this requirement. She was used to using Lava Pond all the time. So she was glad that the defensive spell played to her advantage. The shortcoming of not being to be regarded as a standalone spell was balanced by the spell's casting time. Since the lava was already up for the spell's taking, it largely cut down on the execution delay while keeping it easy on the caster's mana consumption. That's why Veronica was able to cast Lava Shell with such ease. She was almost secured from external harm if and when the spell completed the construction of the sphere around her. The inclusion of Lava Shell made Veronica even more confident in using her signature spell Lava Pond. Whenever she felt threatened, she'd enter the lava shell and spread her mana sense to observe the situation outside. The spell would buy enough time for her team to deal with the enemy waiting outside while Veronica stayed inside the shell safely. Although rare, Veronica had been saved by the spell several times in her team's previous battles. So when she sensed something was wrong, Veronica didn't have to think twice about which spell she was going to use next. Additionally, the spell was almost complete. But alas, Aaron had been too fast for anyone like the lava mage. It held true even with her preemptive actions and her ideal spell combo. The sphere construction reached her shoulders in height, with only her head peeking outside. Another few moments and she'd be completely safe from external harm. This was when Aaron showed up right above the lava sphere in the air. He didn't waste any time. Because he knew that if he did, dealing with the bitch would become extremely difficult. Blitzbolt. Veronica was almost done with her lava shell. There was only a small entrance over her head that was rapidly getting closed on her. But just as it was about to completely seal her in, a bolt of lightning made its way through the opening and landed on her. Aaron had sent his mana circuits on hyperdrive to get the most out of the blitz bolt and extend its range a bit. As a result of its sheer power and stunning effect, Veronica was forced to dispel her defensive shield against her will. Veronica felt the full burn of the lightning spell. Thanks to her mana layer that she had deployed unconsciously, she was still able to stay awake. Otherwise, she would have been long since passed out. Things could have been much direr had Aaron concentrated his attack on her vital organs. But the butcher wanted to punish the bitch without getting punished for it. So he had chosen the back of Veronica's neck for the blitz bolt's point of impact. To cope with the spell's adverse effects, Veronica screamed. There was no way her lava shell spell would be executed properly anymore. So she dispelled it before it was forcefully dispelled. Veronica's determination to act under the situation was what helped her regain some control, and she cast her signature spell again. Her almost formed lava shell was cracked before crumbling down. The remains of the shell along with the nearby ground quickly started turning into lava. Veronica now had a brand new lava pond to herself. The newly created lava whips were created from the lava pond. They started their hunt for the vile creature who had hurt their master till she almost soiled her pants. But Aaron was expecting this and was already on top of things. Sedated perception plus stunning speed. Aaron also launched an altered version of the fireball spell and coated his feet with balls of fire. The blitz steps could not be performed after 3 spells were active, so his trademark lightning feet were covered with only yellow blobs of fire. Aaron had done this to counter Veronica's lava for a short time. The blobs of fire will have their mana fire, which would prevent the mana fire generated by lava from affecting Aaron's feet, only if temporarily. Aaron only needed to step over the lava pond for a short while anyway. So he didn't hesitate to abandon his blitz steps and settle for this variation to match the situation. Now with the distance almost negligible, it didn't take a long time for the butcher to get close to Veronica. He grabbed her face with his one hand while she was focusing on his afterimage getting pierced by her lava whips. Aaron placed his other hand right over the girl's stomach and executed Blitz Bolt again while looking at Veronica in her eyes. Her sensitive bladder had a bolt of lightning running through it along with other organs near her stomach. Veronica had just found the joy of capturing the vile creature with her lava whips. The whips had quickly caught up with her approaching enemy and pierced him. No. This isn't right. Veronica thought and narrowed her eyes on Aaron getting pierced by her lava whips. When she observed that it was only the guy's afterimage that had gotten pierced, she was reminded of a grim possibility. There was a possibility that Aaron was faster than she thought and could handle her easily. Veronica wanted to look around her to pinpoint her opponent's location. But it turned out that she didn't have to. That's because Aaron's cold blue eyes were staring right at her the next moment when she thought of taking countermeasures. Veronica felt a bolt of lightning pass through her stomach. She was stunned before feeling numb from her waist down. Plus, Aaron's emotionless eyes made her scared for her life. It invoked the primal fear in her heart that she hadn't felt before. All this was enough for her to lose control of her bladder. Veronica peed her pants in the battle ring. Chapter 198, Staunch Believer of Gender Equality P2. But she didn't realize it until it was too late to do anything about it. In addition, she had worn white pants. So the wet stains were now easily visible to the audience. Aaron smirked when his nose twitched in response to the uric smell. Although he wasn't sure, he was aiming for the same effect. He was aware of his spell's effects his targets would have on their bodies after all. Try keeping your nose high with this incident forever etched onto the onlookers' memories now. Thought Aaron before balling his fists and mercilessly punching hard on Veronica's stomach. The young lady who had just soiled her clothes was sent off in the air as the heavy fist hit her sensitive stomach region. The onlookers started registering what had happened with Veronica as she flew further away than her initial position. And the audience bursts into uncontrolled laughter. The guys started cheering while the girls fanned their faces, looking as if they were feeling empathic embarrassment in Veronica's stead. Veronica was enraged after the vile creature forced her to have the most embarrassing moment of her life. She was incensed after hearing the jeers and taunts she heard from the crow surrounding the battle ring. Not long after she landed, Aaron had followed her to the place she had just landed and punched at the same region the same way again. The result of that attack was the same as the previous one. With another brutal attack accumulating on her body, Veronica was sent into the air. Her stomach was punched again by Aaron's unforgiving attack before she was able to react to the embarrassment and rage she felt. And another terrible situation unfolded for her as a result of that pain. Veronica vomited all the food that she had eaten before her fight. And that vomit was distinctly visible as it flew in the opposite direction of the one she was flying towards. Ugh. This son of a bitch, I'll kill him. Veronica could only call names to Aaron and threaten him in her mind as her mouth was foul and full of her vomit. It was not like Aaron would find the part about his mother to be something to get angry about anyway. But the young lady didn't know that. So she cursed Aaron some more while she was getting beaten up badly by him. Aaron's barrage of attacks on Veronica continued only for a short while. He was quick and efficient about his assault, targeting his opponent's soft spots. Arg. Veronica cried in agony and frustration. A pure, non-element lizard wave of F-rank mana was sent all around her with her standing at the center. As a result, Aaron was pushed back and was prevented from approaching his enemy. Veronica had a small breakthrough within the F rank. She was very close to having a breakthrough in the liquid stage of the F rank in the first place. But she had felt like she was missing something when she practiced her ranking technique for the past few days, whenever she tried to manually enter the breakthrough with the help of her technique. But this time, Veronica had a breakthrough even without having to assume a resting position or practice her ranking technique. This was known as the forced breakthrough. Forced breakthroughs didn't require a ranker to practice their ranking techniques. They would happen spontaneously when the rankers were in do-or-die situations. The word forced may have a negative connotation to it. But the effects of forced breakthroughs were anything but negative. Forced breakthroughs were something high-ranked entities would look for when they stopped progressing in their ranking journey through normal means. They would actively look for adrenaline-inducing moments by participating in Mortal Kombat battles or exploring dangerous places. One could say that forced breakthroughs required rankers to be extremely emotional. Veronica's breakthrough was not an exception to this assumption either. But instead of an unwavering survival instinct, she felt uncontrollable fury. Veronica's anger towards Aaron allowed her to take the last step required to enter the middle stage of the F rank. However, the ranker who had achieved the breakthrough couldn't register her success because her mind was consumed by flames of anger. The wave of mana subsided before getting dispersed. Aaron understood what had happened. But he didn't care that his opponent had a breakthrough in the middle of the battle and approached Veronica again. While Aaron beat Veronica with only his fists, Veronica's repetitive shrieks could be heard in the surrounding area. He had coated his fists with his lightning and didn't need to execute any other spell besides that at this point. Since Veronica's thoughts were in disarray, she had stopped fighting back. Aaron could have made her unconscious and neutralized her. But the butcher had just enough of the bitch's shit. Aaron had decided to answer Veronica's verbal spats with his fist and occasional kicks. He had let her leave even with all her transgressions against him without doing anything when they were in the city of Laurel. But not this time. It could be said that Aaron was just being a staunch supporter of gender equality in a true sense. He knew that forced breakthroughs wouldn't necessarily grant the rankers instant power UPS if they weren't aware of their situations or didn't know how to make use of that breakthrough. That's why Aaron didn't give his opponent any time to register what had happened to her and continued beating her. You vile creature. This is not over. Veronica was at the end of her rope from losing consciousness. Yet she still somehow mumbled those when Aaron got close to him. She was fighting so hard against losing consciousness to say those words because her rage was so intense. Yeah? You started this, bitch. Don't you fucking dare turn this into my mistake now that your squishy ass is handed to you. Thought Aaron and shrugged his shoulders in non-vocal response. Chapter 199, Quadruple Spell Stacking. The butcher felt nothing as he looked at the result of using Veronica as his punching bag. She now had black and blue spots all over her body. Her mouth had a cocktail of saliva, vomit and blood dripping from it. Her wet-stained white pants and her now messy hair added to her battered look. Aaron was finally satisfied with this result. He smiled magnanimously towards Veronica as if granting the bitch her most desired wish. Bye-bye. Aaron said as he grabbed Veronica's head and executed Blitzbolt. Veronica Garcia could finally rest as she was sent to feel the bliss of unconsciousness. Needless to say, all this took place within a span of only a few minutes. Aaron took his time dealing with Veronica. But his perception of time would always get skewed while in sedated perception. So in reality, not much time had passed since Aaron dealt with the cannon fodder. Aaron finally looked up after watching Veronica Garcia fall to her knees before finally sleeping like a baby on the bare ground. He observed that his opponent's team was not the only one who had its members neutralized. Ivor had taken down Jake and Becky just the way Aaron had taken down Veronica. He could have finished them sooner but he had underestimated Becky's attacks and suffered a bit because of it. From that moment on, Ivor acted with prudence and slowly chipped away at their defense until finally neutralizing the team's tank. After Jake fell, it was only a matter of time before Becky followed her teammate in his footsteps. Renita on the other hand had still somehow kept Jason pinned with her attacks. But she was soon going to be out of breath and mana as she had expended a lot of them compared to her opponents. The reason for this is that they were waiting for the inevitable to happen. She would soon get taken down by the boy prodigy if things progressed the way they were progressing and there was no external intervention. He was on the verge of fighting Jason and helping Renita against his pragmatic judgment when his senses told him there would be danger soon befalling him. He looked in the direction of Ivor vs Becky and Jake's battle spot to see that Ozan Jr. was rapidly approaching him. Ironically, Ozan Jr. had almost the same kind of lightning spells Aaron had. That was because they had both got them from the Academy's repertoire. Ozan had also pulled some strings to allow his grandson easy access to better spells and techniques. Ivor was seen executing blitz steps. Their eyes met even from a distance. Ozan Jr. couldn't help feeling excited after seeing how Aaron fought with his opponents. Ha ha ha. You are doing well, Aaron Idril. Very good. This is what I have been missing. Duel with a lightning ranker of almost equal caliber. Don't disappoint me. Prepare yourself. Ivor provoked Aaron loudly and made his confidence in him and his battle prowess known to all his fans. The crowd broke into chanting Ivor's name as they saw him about to engage with the guy who didn't know how to show leniency to the fairer gender. Another ass who thinks the world revolves around him. Thought Aaron as he drew his guitars out. He didn't know much about Ivor's battle style. However, he knew the guy was about to be a pain in the ass to deal with if he didn't open most of his cards. Blitz steps. Aaron activated his movement technique as well and ran in the direction of Ivor's to meet him head-on. The two lightning element rankers with almost the same type of spells were going to battle it out. Sedated speed plus stunning speed. The world stagnated around Aaron as he activated his time element specific spell combo. Unlike the rare but natural time element users, he didn't feel the backlashes of using the spells of the same element no matter how many times he executed them. So it was not strange that Aaron would decide to combo use his battle-centric time element spells without worrying about the after effects. But that only made it so that Aaron would have only one more active spell before his senses, mana consumption, and mana circuit felt overwhelmed. Aaron had chosen blitz steps. He held his guitar tight as he aimed at his opponent. But unlike the stagnated world around him, Ivor didn't feel stagnated at all. Ivor saw Aaron start producing after images in his wake and knew his opponent was coming at him with all that he had got. But he wasn't frustrated or afraid by the latter's scary speed. Ivor had his ways to make full use of his speed-centric elemental affinity. He activated the time element artifact he had worn as a ring quadruple stacked blitz steps. The F-rank time element artifact was a very rare item Izanozan had bought for his grandson using his reach. The ring had limited usage each day. And each time it was discharged, it would need to be charged with an array that made use of extals like a fireplace makes use of the wood. In short, charging the ring was a very tedious and expensive process that the average Joe couldn't afford to do. But Ivor wasn't average. He had secured the day's usage of artifacts on Aaron alone. Because he knew his battle with Aaron would last only a short while before the latter beat him up. The time element artifacts were rarer than the time element users. That said a lot about their scarcity. So it was nothing short of a miracle when Izan found an apt artifact for his scion. The artifact's effects were similar to Aaron experiencing sedated perception. But unlike Aaron who supported the spell with his mana, Ivor's enhanced perception granted to him by the artifact was autonomous and didn't require him to regulate with mana. In short, Ivor was outsourcing sedated perception while importing its effects with his artifact ring. But that was not the only artifact he had. Ivor's boots were also a pair of lightning element artifacts. Their usage was even simpler. They would help Ivor stack blitz steps, enabling him to stack the movement spell 4 times at once. Part 7 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.